Here we go, guys. Thursday night, CrossFire. Listen, it is going to be an outstanding show for you guys tonight. You know, there's a lot of excitement in the air. Just for some of you guys that are tuning in now, make sure, guys, also the audio is good. We're also going to have D joining us shortly. D was having a bit of some Discord issues, as was I before the show. Listen, big show tonight. We've got games releasing, some of them releasing in just a few hours. I know Nib got a hold of me before the show. He goes, Mooch, listen, you're very lucky I'm doing the show. I wanted to play Astrobot. And I said, that's outstanding. Of course, the great Death Singer will be waiting 2 years to play Astrobot, but that doesn't matter. It does not matter. He will also be playing it at some point in time.
1 year.
1 year. Okay, well, there you go. I love your attitude there, Singer. That's great. All right, so the great Death Singer, everybody.
It's not going to be 1 year. It'll be 2,
It'll be two, I think.
Based on the...
Yes,
yeah.
Possibly. But we'll see.
It's only remasters, remakes, and live service have been below the 2 year mark.
But then Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart was only a year.
Nah, 2.
1?
2 years.
Wasn't it?
Nah, 2 years. All their tentpole titles, even Sackboy
Death
was 2
Singer
years.
is now looking up the stats on Rift Apart. I think it was more than 1 for sure.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Let me say this. I also want to say thanks to everybody in the chat that's here right now. Please hit that like button. Thanks to the panel, too. Not only is it a big game release night, guys, okay? But you also got the NFL launches tonight. And I know the great Crap Gamer is on the show tonight, so we'll start with the great Crap Gamer. Crap, I mean, you're here tonight, and your Ravens are playing.
Yeah, you know what? Like, here's the thing, though. I love football and I love the Ravens, but the first game of the season is always like almost inconsequential. I mean, you hope to get a win or whatever, but it's like there's no panic either way or celebrating either way with that. You know, like for me anyway, I just feel like, hey, you know, healthy. Let's see what you guys got.
Yeah,
you know, it doesn't help. You know, they're going and playing the defending champs or whatever. You know, on their turf,
true.
it's like that's a rough ask anyway. So. You know, like it's an exciting time though. You know, there's a lot of stuff going on, and I'll catch some of it. Probably watch a little bit of it.
Well, I appreciate you being here, Crap. I really do. It starts at 8:30.
Yeah.
So you won't miss the whole game. That's for sure. I will say this much. I want to say, please, guys, hit that like button. Please hit the subscribe button. You'll look at that amazing description right there. Above it is the join button, and that's how you get your name in green in the chat. Shout out also to the great Detective Seeds who's here tonight, and as well as the great Mash who's been donating memberships to the channel like unbelievable. So I say thank you both very, very much. Speaking of that, the great Detective Seeds is also here tonight. Not only is he here to be a panel member on the amazing topics we have to talk this evening, but he also got a chance to play Astrobot. No, he's not going to spoil anything. He is a professional, but he will be discussing the game and giving you his thoughts on it in case you're kind of on the fence. The great Detective Seeds. Seeds, how you doing tonight?
Doing good, man. Can't wait to watch the game later. See Taylor Swift 45 or 46 times. Appreciate you obviously always having me on. I did get PlayStation sent me a nice care package today. I
saw that.
They sent me a controller, the Astrobot limited edition controller, and they sent me an extra controller because they probably know I almost broke mine in reviewing Astrobot. So
I see. Well, as a mooch, I can tell you, and for all the mooches out there in the world, we're very, very jealous, Detective Seeds, when you're like, I just got this from Sony PlayStation. Sony, if you're listening, the mooch would love a free controller or a free anything at that point. That being said, Seeds, great to have you here tonight. The great Eric Jackson is back with us. Eric, you know, there's been a lot of back and forth. There's the Concord news. There's, of course, the Astrobot news. There's the stuff going on with Stalker 2. The community is in an uproar, and, you know, in a way, I have to say, I kind of miss it. We had a very, very relaxed summer, but when things get rowdy, I need the voice of reason. So I gave a call, and here he is. Eric, how you doing tonight?
Doing good, man. Happy to be here. Gentlemen of the panel, what's going on? Crossfire chat, what's going on? Yeah, man, this is the time of year where things start picking up and ramping up, and September's already hit the ground running, so let's go.
You already know, E. Appreciate it. The great D Batch, by the way. D and I were talking a week ago when a lot of the news hit, and D says, Mooch, I got to get on the show. I got so much stuff to say. And I said, D, listen, I said, I got 10 people on this week. I said, let's get you on next week. I want you to have all the airtime you desire. The great D Batch is back on Crossfire. I love it when he's here. You love it when he's here. D, how you doing tonight?
I'm good, man. Hopefully you guys can hear me good now. Hopefully I sorted out the mic issues.
You did. Sound great.
Oh, good.
Yeah, nice and clear. Real clear.
You sound in my face, finally.
I see you out there on the timeline. Yeah, I see you out there on the timeline checking people and the foolishness.
I was biting at the, and I really wanted to get on last week's show because there was two different narratives going on regarding the PlayStation 5 Pro. You had each side of the coin, and the rebuttal of the PlayStation 5 Pro, I found it hilarious. So yeah, I really wanted to get on and talk about it. I was really ready to go, man.
Well, D, if any of the topics tonight kind of merge into that, you can take the mic and state your case, because I think a lot of what happened last week is still very relevant in the news this week. So great to have you here, D. The great Nib95 is back with us. Nib says to me, Mooch, and I said this when the show was starting, he says, Mooch, you're very lucky. He's like, I was really...
No, not lucky. That makes it sound bad, like I grace you with my presence.
Your
no,
presence,
it's not like
the
that.
great Nib, everybody.
I'm happy to be here. It's Astrobot. Come on, man.
I know. And it's two things, Nib. It's Astrobot. It's Astrobot sitting at a 94 meta. People are talking about it as a game of the year. We'll get into that in a second. It's unbelievable. But great to have
95 on OpenCritic without waiting.
That's right. That's correct.
Crazy. Unreal. I think actually on OpenCritic it's overtaken Shadow of the Erdtree, whereas on Metacritic, Shadow of the Erdtree is still just above.
It is, well, I think on OpenCritic it is beating it, and on the Metacritic it is a point lower than Shadow of the Erdtree. Yeah. Correct.
Yeah.
So well stated by the great Nib, and of course the great Death Singer is here, guys. Death Singer, you guys know, he's here weekly, but I got to tell you, Death Singer is also very excited to get his flowers again this week. Although it's funny, he wants his flowers and he wants to put them on a tombstone. I don't know what's wrong. Singer, welcome back to the show, buddy. How you doing tonight?
Oh, I am doing absolutely fantastic. Space Marine 2 launched. I put it down after I took a talon off a Tyranid and stabbed it in his face, which is a fantastic time. Also, there's something to be said about crushing someone's head in between your hands.
Wow.
Just slapping your hands together and it's pretty fun. Also,
yes, I'm glad it's a video game show. Yes, please.
It turns out. I'm talking about Space Marine. No, I'm talking about Space Marine 2, right?
Oh, God, please.
I was going to say, play does indeed have limits. Shout out to Concord.
Oh, wow, I see. Well, Singer, I hope you didn't work all week on that, but I do like it. I did enjoy that. I thought that was very good.
I've been working on it since the news.
I gotta give Singer his flowers when they're due. The great Singer, everybody. By the way, shout out to Sano.com. He says 3-star Michelin dining, Wukong, Astro, and Space Marine. Outstanding. The great Tactical Gamer, by the way. Great to have him back over here in the States. He says, out tailgating at Arrowhead Stadium tonight. About to watch them Chiefs drop that Super Bowl banner. Again, love the show, Mooch. Tactical, great to have you back with us, buddy. I hope you're here listening in one ear while you're enjoying the game in the other. Listen, I want to get started here. I did tell the great detective Seeds. I said, Seeds, he calls in from the road. He's like our Adam Schefter, but for video games. Okay? That's how I look at the great detective Seeds. Seeds, you got a chance to play. Well, let me ask you first. How long have you gotten a chance to play Astrobot before you did your official review? And let the audience know kind of how you went into the game and, how you ended up with your score.
Yeah, so I actually had previewed it previously with PlayStation back in May. And so I had about 30 minutes of hands-on time with it. So I kind of knew going into it really like how polished it was then. In Astro's Playroom, I had come fresh off of doing a platinum trophy for it with my kids. And so I was super pumped for it. I was sent the code last Tuesday? I think last Tuesday or Wednesday. So I had over a week with it. I beat the entire game. Got all the collectibles, everything that was in the game. And so to beat the actual campaign took me I want to say about 13 hours, and then for completion, I'm sitting right around 30. Okay. And so some of the levels, as I said in my review, if you want to find it, is on, if you go to a YouTube channel called Gaming Sins, I have a pretty cool opportunity and partnership that I'm working on with them. The channel's got about 364,000 subscribers on it. They reached out to me, and I'm doing some pretty cool stuff with them coming up that I'll be able to talk about later with reviews. So if you want to see it, the link to it is on my Twitter on Detective Season. You can check it out over there. But game is significantly harder than the first one. I will say that right off the bat. So if you think that you're going to go into this one and have a breeze, there will probably be most kids that will not be able to beat the game, and probably a lot of adults. There are 6. Let's see. There's 5 main galaxies, and then a 6th is kind of like this lost galaxy. And I'm not doing any spoilers. They've kind of shown this stuff. But when you go into each galaxy, you're going to have main missions in there. Typically, you're going to have 5 to 6 in each galaxy, and then you're going to have side missions. And the side missions in the galaxies consist of X button, basically the main buttons on the controller. They are hard. They are by far the hardest missions in the game, except for the last one and getting the special bot. It is crazy. If you've seen some of the footage out there of the game, you may have seen some of the levels and how crazy they are. And I can't say how good of a job they did. And you're probably going to sit there and go, man, is this guy just going to glaze Astrobot? Well, yes, because it has like a 94. And it is by far the smoothest, best performing game that I've played definitely this year, and probably top 3 that I've played this gen, maybe number 1. The Horizon Forbidden West, the Burning Shores DLC obviously was very well done. But the music that they have to it that you play with is by far probably the best musical score I've ever played a game to. And I know some people are going to be like, oh my God, I can't believe you're missing this game. It was just so intense on some of the missions. And like, you guys have to understand that when you're reviewing games and you get early access, it is very cool. But you also don't have any fucking guides or any help to look.
Yeah.
And so I was not really depending, but I was communicating with other guys who had the game early, and we're trying to figure out some of these missions and where to get some of these things from and where to find certain things. And it really was a collective, kind of conversation with some other content creators on trying to find different things and figure it out. So when you go into the game, and you start playing it, I'm telling you to go into it knowing that there are going to be some hard aspects to the game. But a lot of the aspects of it, of being hard, are very fulfilling once you're done. The colors and just how vibrant and rich they are in every single environment. They did a great job with these different skill sets. You can slow down time. You can kind of launch yourself like a rocket. All these different attributes that you can do on different levels. And then they bring it together kind of at the end. And you have to really remember how to do certain things. And so I do think right now it is my game of the year. And I do think I'd be surprised if it doesn't win. I think that obviously there's some other games that make pretty good case, but once the general public has their hands on it, I mean,
well, they do already. And Seeds, what did you give? Yeah. What was the grade you gave it?
Well, I mean, I don't give number scores because I don't really understand how that works, because my brain's apparently stupid. But if I had to give a number score or say yes, I agree, I do agree with the 94. I even when I played the preview earlier back in June, I put out a tweet then saying, "Hey, I predict Astrobot's going to get between a 92 and 95," and it hit a 94 because it was so polished months ago that they had all that time to even clean it up even more, that I was not surprised when we woke up and people were like, oh my God, look at the scores, because it was that good when we previewed it. That, I mean, some of the journalists that were in my play session that I was doing, they walked out there just blown away, and some of them were not PlayStation guys. And so, yeah, I'm not surprised whatsoever, and I think that it's going to sell like gangbusters. There's some people on different podcasts saying that, PlayStation guys are only bragging about this game because of the score. It just shows that they don't play this game. Like, did I buy a PlayStation specifically for Astrobot? Yeah. No. But it's a perk for having a PlayStation 5. And what they did with this game, not only with the DualSense, but just the overall variety of what you get to do in this game, I was impressed. And
Well,
that's the main thing I can say is impressed.
Let me do this because you did a great job without really giving anything away. I see. Shout out to Babor in the chat. He's like, spoilers. There's no spoilers. He said it's a great game.
No spoilers.
But Nib, go ahead and ask. I do want to have the panel kind of. If you guys have questions for Seeds, go ahead.
Yeah, I do have a question.
Go ahead, Nib.
Yeah.
So before I ask the question, I was just going to say, that point you made about Xbox centric like journalists. So Jeff Grubb put out a tweet. He said, "This is the best game PlayStation has ever made." And Paris Lily, he put out a tweet saying, "This is the best platformer he's played since Super Mario Galaxy."
Yep.
So clearly, it crosses the bridges. But my question was, you said it's difficult, which is music to my ears. Like, can't wait.
Yeah.
But approximately how far or what percentage of the game is easier and what percentage is harder? Because I presumably some people could still play it at least for a little bit before it starts getting really difficult.
Yeah, that's a good question. And just so you guys know, I didn't give away any spoilers. You could see the stuff I'm talking about based off like the blog and just stuff they've shown and the reviews. Like we had certain criteria in there that we couldn't show as part of our reviews. And so I simply spoke to everything that was not embargoed, basically. I would say if you do all the content, probably 30 to 40% of it, you're going to be like, this ain't too bad. And you because it's really setting the fundamentals for you to go and do the harder side content missions that are literally the X, triangle, square, and circle. And it's not a spoiler. It's been shown. And then the final mission. Those main missions that you're doing is really kind of the training, if you will, for those harder side missions. So I'd say 40% I thought was kind of just a breeze. Probably an additional 20% was it's getting a little bit harder. And then the remaining, 40%, which is those side missions and the final mission. And I'm including, just so you know, Niv, I'm including going around and collecting things too.
Yeah.
So yeah. I'm kind of including the entire portrait of the game. That additional 40% of finding things. And especially without a guide, I guess now it might be easier.
It's really interesting because right off the bat, I know it's going to sound like glazing, but from like a design perspective, I hear those statistics and I'm like, they really got it because that's such an excellent balance. It's like it's enough to draw you in, to let you feel the game out, but then those kind of enthusiast gamers, because some of the like Mario games in the past and stuff I've played, and I felt too much of what I'm doing is too easy, and then like the end game is really difficult. But it's like, come on, man, like so what you've described to me is like the perfect arrangement.
So I haven't said more times than probably other than whenever I played FromSoft games, like dying and be like, okay, one more time. Like I would play this game for 6-7 hours at a time and lose track of time of what time it was because I was so invested in that part. And the thing is in some areas, again, not a spoiler, in some areas you have checkpoints. Some areas you start from the beginning. So you could be almost all the way to the end of the platform. You can see the finish line. And then I put in my review, something will hit you just out of nowhere and knock you off the platform. You got to start all over. And it's that one more time I said in my review, like I said one more time, probably more than someone's, cousin who keeps going back to their baby daddy, because it's literally that addicting of what they did with that formula. And they made it so approachable at the beginning that people are going to be like, I have to beat this. I have to figure it out.
Yeah,
I just think that some are probably not going to be able to. Man.
And I think you really put a good synopsis on the game there, Seeds. Crap, this is something that we talked about a long time ago, and it was something when we said, Xbox needs a platformer, it needs that kind of attention. First of all, the other thing that Seeds, he didn't even get to, and I took the mic away from him, the music score is unbelievable in this. I know that you played us, right? But crap, this is something that I think that this kind of hits an array of an audience, doesn't it?
Yeah, I feel like it's probably coming at a real good time too, because let's just be real, Sony and what they do best is the single player games. Yeah. Right?
Yep.
And when they get away from that, bad things happen, Concord. So it's good to see that they were able to kind of really have this waiting in the wings to kind of make sure that people are on board with, hey, single player games are great. This might be the best game of the year. It could be in a year that people thought was going to be a bad year for PlayStation. they might end up with Game of the Year, right?
Yeah.
And it just makes you kind of question some of the stuff. I can see why people question that on Microsoft's side, because they have multiple, IP that are platformers, right?
Yes,
They do nothing with them, right? I mean, they own Spyro, they own Crash Bandicoot, they own Banjo-Kazooie, they own Conquer, they own a lot of IP, and they're doing absolutely nothing with it. And we see just how. But anyway, like, I can imagine they would probably sell the studio that made the game after anyway. So whatever. But props to Sony for getting this stuff out there. Look, I think the game looks great. But Mooch, I was on board with Astrobot.
Yeah.
With the VR game, the first VR game, right?
Yeah, you were very
it was
loud
phenomenal.
About that. Yes.
I was like, man, and I think that got an 89 Metacritic or something. It was very close to a 90. And I was like, back then when that came out, I said, this kind of rivals Mario. And people said I was crazy.
Yeah, that's why
right?
I asked. That's why I asked
I
you this
did. I said
question.
it.
I was
like, it rivals Mario. I understand it's VR, and so probably not a lot of people will play it, but it really rivals Mario. And then when we got the pack in with Astro's World or whatever, I was like, wow, this is really incredible platformer. This is like old school stuff, but it's such like a history of PlayStation, which I like how they did that. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to playing the game as well. I think that's really kind of a love letter to PlayStation fans. Like, people were saying, I heard somebody saying earlier, maybe going to PC. I don't think this game goes to PC. I think it's like a PlayStation thing. It's like everything about PlayStation, history of PlayStation.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen other people talk about that on X too. They're like, I just to me anyway, like, I just think it makes sense to keep this right where it's at. Just in my opinion, because like I said, it's like everything PlayStation, and it would just seem maybe out of place.
I've been told emphatically no, that game will not and is not being considered to go to any other platform.
Yeah, that makes total sense too, because like I said, it's a whole love letter to PlayStation, right? It's like
it doesn't make sense to do it. It doesn't make sense to do it. When you guys go to play through this game and you see, like, obviously everyone has played through the first game, so I can kind of talk about that, where it goes through the history of PlayStation. This one centers around, I mean, everyone's already seen what it centers around the PlayStation 5, right? So
that's right.
It makes no sense whatsoever. And that's why, where I talked to one of the guys that I game with quite frequently that works at PlayStation, said, no, it doesn't even make sense to do it. There's no way that they would do this. It's become the mascot of PlayStation. And why would you take this game and put it on PC or the Nintendo Switch? Because it's not going to speak to that audience, because they don't give a shit about building a PlayStation 5 or the history of PlayStation on those platforms. Mm-hmm. So they're going to keep it for themselves on PlayStation.
It does make sense that now that you put it that way. Actually, when me and Nib were going back and forth with Detzinger before at the beginning of the show, I was just, following suit, thinking the, 12 to 24 month. But now that you mention it, it really is a love letter to PlayStation fans. So at the end of the day, I don't know how that would resonate on PC. Maybe PC gamers wouldn't mind. That's completely up in the air.
Yeah, and you wouldn't be able to do it on another platform because you have to have the DualSense controller to do some of the maneuvers on the game and to navigate some of the obstacles. Like, I guess you could say, hey, we'll put it on PC, but it requires you to have a DualSense. But I was told, in fact, that game is not even considered to go to PC.
It does hold water. So D-Batch, I got to ask you, we're going to get into a lot of the other topics here, but Astrobot, I did want to cover at the beginning of the show because it is a hot ticket item as far as the news went today. But D, are you going to be picking this game up? And I'm even more curious, will you be doing a breakdown of it?
Yeah, so I pre-ordered the game. I just got my notification that it's shipped, so I'll get it in the morning.
Okay.
As well, I got the Astrobot limited edition controller.
Yep.
And I'm gonna be recording it. I'm gonna play it with my son. Yeah, and I'll probably do like a brief analysis on it. But I more want to just play it with my kid, just to have an experience with him. And I think this is like he's my son, so obviously we bonded, but we really bonded hard over Mario. Mm-hmm. And I think this is another game where we can bond over it. And I can introduce him to the PlayStation because he's mostly on PC these days. He started off with the Switch, then he graduated to PC. So he doesn't really know anything about the PlayStation. So I think this game will kind of get him interested in it. And he saw it, and I told him we're going to play it on Friday, so he's excited. So yeah, I'm excited for it. I'll be honest, I'm surprised by the Metacritic on it. I thought it would land at about 85. You know, let's say if I was being gracious, maybe 87. I did not expect it to land at a 94. That's just incredible. And for them to say that it's like one of the best games that Sony's ever made is, you know, that Sony makes some great games. Now, will it be the best game for me that they ever created? Probably not.
Right.
But I think it's going to be a fun, polished experience. And I think it's probably the best platformer they've ever made. And it might be a contender for, like, you know, platformer, you know, of the decade or something.
Well, D,
based on the reviews going out,
we're kind of in the same boat. I tweeted out, I thought the game was when I did, it was a 6 day ago, just about a week ago, I predicted an 88 was my score. And it's not any disrespect to Astrobot. It was just because I saw all the bad publicity going on right at that point in time. Concord was definitely pulling the Sony name down. I said, well, you know what? I said, between what's going on right now, all this communication going on between the gaming media, I said the game's going to definitely get some 90s from some folks. And then I thought it would get a couple of mid 80s for people who are just like, you know, it's not my bag. And that's where I came up with this median of 88, you know, that between 92, 85. I said, oh, maybe that's where it'll land. But, you know, 94, I'm not going to lie. I don't really go by Metacritic. I was going to play this game. I also already have the controller, the Astrobot controller coming within a day or two, and the game preloaded. But the point of the matter is that the 94 in this case kind of makes you a little more amped to play it. And I'm doing the same thing. I think it's going to be a great family game. Definitely what we're doing tomorrow night. I think it's just gonna be a lot of fun to just jam out. It's the fact that people are making Mario references that kind of hits home. And you know, Eric, I just got to bring up that, you know, us old school gamers, okay, E. You know, when someone relates something to Mario, Eric, that's a sensitive. I don't even on the podcast relate things to Mario Brothers because it's kind of so sacred, right? So you have a lot of reviewers saying this, and these are people that have been in the business a long time. They're comparing it. I saw like you said, Super Mario Galaxy, and I've seen a few people saying Game of the Year, and those are some strong terms to come out for a game like Astrobot. E, where were you on today's news?
Yeah, no, it was. I kind of had maybe at a meta of like 90, and I'm like you, like I just kind of look at the meta stuff just as, you know, anecdotal of everything else. I don't really care. Like the games I'm going to play. I know it's like a little fun meta game that everybody kind of does before a game drops because it's, you know, good fodder for, you know, Twitter and stuff like that. But yeah, for it to hit 94, I was like, it's been a while since we've seen a PlayStation game hit in those 90s, and for it to be that right in the center almost there, I'm like, wow, that's pretty interesting. But like you said, the comparisons to Mario, I know there are people who like to kind of, you know, downplay, you know, Nintendo, like they're above it now, you know. And I always find it funny that most of us, you know, in a certain age bracket, you were either old enough to rock Atari, and then you moved into Nintendo, then maybe you moved from Nintendo, you started messing, you know, a little bit more with Sega and PlayStation, whatever the case may be. And yeah, you can outgrow it, but at the end of the day, you think generationally it is high praise across the board, whether you started gaming 40 years ago, 5 years ago. People know what the hell you're talking about when you say, man, this is on par with a Mario game. You know, that IP transcends gaming and is in a level of, you know, pop culture that everybody knows Mario. It doesn't matter if it's your mother or your aunt or your uncle. People know what that means when you say that. So that's praise. That's high praise and great company to be in, you know, for relatively a new character in Astrobot, you know, a charming character. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out.
Eric, it's what you said.
Mooch,
too.
Can I comment on that real quick?
Yeah, Seeds, go ahead. Let me say one thing real quick about the meta thing. Yeah. I'm with Eric on that, the whole Metacritic thing. Like, that doesn't gauge whether or not I'm going to buy a game or not. The only thing I could say is, and tell me what you guys think. I'm actually curious what the audience thinks in the panel. When a game gets a score of like a 94, 95, you know, 96, anything upwards of that, you may not care. You may say, I was going to buy this game anyways, but your hype kind of goes up. I've also had the opposite effect where I still buy the game. I still play the game. Maybe I even enjoyed it. But if a Metacritic score hits in that mid 60s or 60, again, doesn't mean the game is going to be awful, but at the same time, may also deter a little bit of your fun going into it. So that's why I think meta can definitely, even for folks that don't live by it, it can still affect to a certain extent your pre-enjoyment of the game. So hype level right now, that's why I've had people write me, Nib being an example, being like, Mooch, the game is out in the UK, you know, but we're going to podcast, you know, and I'm like,
I was saying to Mooch, I was like, okay, I had a few minutes to kill before the podcast. let me watch something on YouTube. I put on my TV. So, I'm not trying to flex the LG, but just so people know what it's advertised on. So I turn it on, LG OLED, and literally the top banner, Astrobot's jumping around. It's like pre-order now.
Yeah.
Like, damn it!
Wow.
Damn it.
Just rubbing it in, just literally a few minutes before launch.
I do wish.
Go ahead, Seeds.
Oh, go ahead,
You go ahead, Seeds. You take the mic.
I do wish. When I was reviewing this, I was thinking about that aspect of Mario, and honestly, I personally don't like the comparison because I am a little older, and well, I think everyone on here pretty much is. Mario was something from a different generation that really cemented its way across multiple different venues. Really, like multiple. I mean, from music to movies and all these different things. And I think that Astrobot is just in its infancy, and it speaks to, I think PlayStation is trying to build a new generation type of mascot, if you will.
Okay. I
personally don't think the comparison is good, just because of how much. If we take Astrobot and we compare it to Mario, I think that we are taking. It's nothing against Astrobot. I mean, the game's my game of the year. I love Astrobot. But I think what we're doing is we're reducing down just how much of an impact Mario's had over 40, 50, how long has it been? 50 years? And I don't think I'm ready to do that.
That's crazy. That's crazy when you put it in the terms like that. Yeah. But was Mario introduced, at least here in the States, was it 80? Was it 85 or
I think it was 84 or 85.
Okay. I don't know. I'm not stating that
and
I know.
Think that. Yeah, someone's going to let us know. I just think that if we do that already, we're reducing Mario down to where it doesn't need to go. And that's no slam against Astrobot. It's saying that Astrobot needs to propel itself over time up to Mario. And I'm not ready to do that yet based off of 2 games. Now, the games are immaculate, but Astrobot is completely different than Mario. Mario transcends itself across different types of culture. And like I said, different types of venues and songs and stuff, where Astrobot speaks to this console, right? And so I just think that it needs to have multiple more games, and to be able to see it fit in with a whole new cast before I'm ready to start talking Mario with Astrobot. And that's out of respect for Mario.
I did have one question. So one thing, obviously, like, between Mario and this is that this is on a much more hardware capable system, right? Because the PlayStation 5 and Switch is too. And I haven't played it yet, but I'm just going by the video reviews that I've seen, especially the Digital Foundry analysis. What it seems like to me is that even though it's not like a graphical showcase per se, they are really utilizing the hardware because there's so much physics-based stuff. Like, like he's smashing through walls that have particle effects and, full physics-based debris and all the rest of it. So would you say, like, in that regard, even though it may not be sort of like The Last of Us or Horizon Forbidden West, does it still feel like a tech showcase?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, they do things in this game that I don't think I've been able to do in any of the other PlayStation games, and I've played them. I think I've played them all, and they do it in a way that's so crafty and just like fun. That the first time I played Astro's Playroom, I felt like I was being tested for a DUI, having to blow my damn controller, and so you don't see that out of Nintendo doesn't have that technology in their Switch to be able to do that with their games. Xbox doesn't have that technology. So we literally see technology evolving, not just on the hardware system, but also its peripherals and its accessories, and being able to tie that in for a experience is something that I find to be immersive, to the point that other companies such as Xbox, if they want to stay within hardware, I do think you're going to have to start making some of these leaps and bounds, because PlayStation, playing Astrobot, and you have to let me know, you guys, after you play it later, what you think, because I'm just sitting here like glazing this dude off. But I was so impressed by how they take you through different aspects. So, I don't want to spoil it, but you're gonna see what I'm talking about when you play it, because there are so many different ways to use the DualSense in there that you're like, oh my god, I didn't think about this.
I'll be honest, like, it's going to sound really pathetic, and I don't care, man. I like technology, right? But again, even like, there was one thing, it's such a simple thing, but it looks like, I don't know if they're sweets or something, but they're like, he's on like a platform with, and it looks like there's like 10,000 bloody sweets on there, and he's spinning around, swinging this thing, and I can just see like physics-based shit like everywhere. It's just like flying around everywhere.
He has
and
physics all the way throughout it. I mean, it's
yeah, and it doesn't
on a ball. Yeah, it's,
right. And it doesn't drop a single frame, and I was like, "Whoa, that's actually really cool." Because I had, you don't.
No bugs, no drop frames, no stutters, no input issues with my controller, nothing. I think Digital Foundry said it best when they said this is the the best technological performing game they've played. I agree, 100%.
They call it just about nearly flawless. Now listen, I'm excited to hear you say it, Seeds, but I can't wait for D Bash's video when he says it. That's when it's really going to get the community up in an uproar. D, you know that if you say there's no glitches.
Yeah, I'm excited about the controller. I ain't gonna lie to you, man. I'm excited for my kid to play it. And when when you're rescuing the little bots and they jump to the controller, you can feel them shaking around the controller, like that to this day, the original one is still the best game for using the haptic control.
Absolutely.
Haptic feedback on the controller.
Absolutely.
So I can just imagine how good it is in this, and with the physics, because it's got a lot of physics-based stuff in it, right? So when you're going through the materials,
it's funny,
going through glass, going through water, you probably really feel it in that controller.
I gotta say this, and I know we're gonna talk about it a little bit later in the show, because you'll see I have footage here. I played I think I got up to the max level. I think it was level 20 in the Black Ops 6 beta. But I played it, when I play any of the Call of Duty games, I play them on PlayStation and on Xbox. And yeah, I love the Elite V2 controller. I really do love it. But I tell you, the DualSense controller and playing it, I know a lot of people that play competitive, Call of Duty Warzone, they actually shut all the rumble off. And I can't. I don't know. Maybe it's because I am who I am when I grew up. I love this technology. It's kind of what Nib said. I like this technology they're giving us in the DualSense and the neat things that it does, the way that it does immerse you into the game. It's weird, but it's one of the things that Sony does so well. And I think that, like I said, we kind of glazed on it. This is something hard to talk about since only Seeds played it. But the music, there was people, shout out to is it Jake Baldino. He's like, he tweeted out something, and I don't want to, I'm paraphrasing. It was something like, I'm still listening to the music in my head. I'm not even playing the game, and the Astrobot music, I was like humming in my head, and it was like that's something that resonates for a long time, even after you put the controller down and you step away from it. That makes you want to go back to the game. I will ask you, Singer, what is your thoughts on this? I know that I would love to say, hey, I can't wait to hear what you say when you enjoy it on your PlayStation 5, Singer, but maybe one day. Are you thinking anything about, would this game make you pick it up?
Absolutely not.
We were so close, everybody, so close. Go ahead.
No. It's nowhere near. It's
not even
it's
close.
Not my spectrum of genres. No.
It's not.
I mean, maybe one day they'll make something that's in my purview of what I like to play. But until then, we'll have to fall back.
You're a very tough
It will
customer.
be in your purview once it comes to PC, or if it comes to PC.
Well, I initially thought Horizon was, but then when I played Zero Dawn, I realized how wrong I was. So yeah,
It'll be Ghost of Tsushima. Don't worry.
I mean, it'll come to PC. I can wait, but I mean, Astrobot is looking good. I mean, it's a mega banger. PlayStation needed this, especially after the kind of news week they had.
That's what I was gonna. I'll lead into that with you as well, Singer. You can talk Astrobot, but we will talk about, as I put here, rest in peace, Concord, and that's why I have the footage here. Shout out to people.
Wait, Mooch, just before you move on, I was just going to touch on one thing. Thing Crap Gamer said, right? He's right, because like fucking Crash Bandicoot, not Crash Bandicoot, Banjo-Kazooie and Tooie, like legit, they're some of my favorite platformers of all time, right? And I don't mean nuts and bolts. Like, don't give us a friggin' spin-off. Like, give us the real thing, right? Either the remakes or a sequel. But it's like, how can you look at the success of Crash Bandicoot? I think it sold 10 million or something, right? And Spyro sold like, 7-8 million. I'm talking about the reignite, the new versions.
Mm-hmm.
And then not want a piece of that pie, like, because there's so much legacy behind Banjo-Kazooie, and it's like, a Nintendo legacy IP. It was critically acclaimed, and there's clearly a demand and an interest among consumers for those kind of legacy platform IPs. We're seeing it like with other IPs. So I don't know why Microsoft is sitting on these things, especially with Rare. Like, what have they been doing? Like working on Everwild for like 50 decades or something. Like,
Yeah.
why not utilize that talent?
They bought Toys for Bob and then let him go.
Right.
Like, who better to do like just remake the first Banjo game like they did Spyro and the Crash series, right? Or remake the first couple of Banjo games. I don't get the thought process there, because you all the time hear Phil Spencer go, yeah, we want more family-friendly games or whatever, and now it's just like they don't care, it's weird to me. But the closest thing they had to like something interesting was like Hi-Fi Rush. And then we saw what happened. They got rid of the studio. And I mean, thankfully, they were ended up being bought instead of closed down, and the IP is gone. But they cared so little for that IP and studio that they just basically gave them away. I mean, honestly.
Yeah.
They gave them away. Again, maybe I'm like completely wrong, but I would have thought like there's a novelty in, okay, do you know what? I've got kids. I can't afford to buy loads of games, and for each different kid or whatever, let me just have Game Pass, and all of them can play whatever they want on it, right? So I would have thought family-friendly games of that ilk would have been especially pertinent to that sort of consumer base and model. But they seem to be going the opposite way. So I'll be honest, I have no idea. I don't know really what Xbox is doing anymore or what their strategy is. But
and even look at like that Mario Kart. Like I play that Mario Kart on the Switch all the time with my son and everything, almost every day. The car, and that game is sold like what, 50 million copies, 60 million,
something like that.
And they just continually add to it. Like rare, they have enough. Like and apparently this was before, I guess, Phil was in charge, but they canceled a rare kart racer where they were going to have a lot of the characters and things like that in it. And I think that would have been like so cool. I don't understand like why they have these types of characters in IP. They're never going to use them, but you could have a competitive kart racer that a lot of people could play. You could have these platformers which seem to completely, they come out and they're really the ones that are really good and people flock to them and love to play them, but it's like because they aren't service based, these companies don't want to do them anymore, and that's a real shame. But I am glad that I guess people are speaking with their wallets more now than ever when it comes to the games they want to spend their time and money on. I'm happy with that. Like I can't blame them, right? Like Astrobot will get mine, but I was never going to buy Concord. That looked like hot shit right from the first time I saw it. I was like, there's no way that game's going to make it a year, and it lasted 2 weeks. So, honestly, it just.
I'll tell you, and it's funny. Listen, all the Concord slander I understand it's warranted. They took it off. It's 2 weeks. I will say we had gameplay up. Crap, I played it for a while. I can understand what Singer was saying when he made his case weeks back, and he said, Mooch, the problem with it is, he said, there's nothing actually wrong with the game. He said, it's just going to get lost in the shuffle, and I'm cutting Singer short because he had a much, much more elaborate answer. But in the world of that hero shooter crap, it just got lost in the shuffle. It didn't offer anything new. But as far as the game goes, and you know me, crap, you see me all the time online. You saw me all weekend on Call of Duty Black Ops Beta. Like, I legitimately love those types of games. The game itself, as far as the shooting mechanics in the game was a polished game. I just think that it didn't offer anything new. I don't think they had great character models. I don't think they had, and Singer said this, they didn't have character models that reached out to a new audience. They also didn't bring, there was no ultimate power at the end. The maps were a little bit smaller, and you've already got Valorant. You've already got Overwatch. You've got all these other games out there, and this one doesn't bring anything new, and in there, it's just not good. And then, let me add Singer's last point, and then I'll give the mic to Singer. Singer said, you're not bringing anything to the table, and you're charging me $40. I didn't mind that, but all these other games are free to play. And I remember I was gaming with somebody, a couple of Soldier and a couple other people are in the chat here. I was gaming with these guys playing Concord. And the one thing that
did you get your refund, Mooch?
Well, I was very I said I didn't have a problem with it, but I happened to get a code. That was a mooch. I mooched the code. So, but yes, I would have got my refund. Absolutely. And I encourage anybody that's listening to the show to get their refund. Absolutely 110%. Whether that's
now, do you think the game's coming back, Mooch? You think they'll just free to play it? Because I think it's a lost cause. I think they're not going to do anything.
That's interesting, crap. Let me tell you something. If it does come back in any way, shape, or form, it wouldn't be like the game that you just saw on screen. It would come back free to play. It would come back with all new characters, all new maps. I think they would probably take the Death Singer's idea of having a super ability or an ultimate ability that builds up over time so that you can absolutely devastate enemies around you to get your kill count up, I think you're looking at a whole new game. But again, I will say this much, and I mean, we talk about it all the time when we say the devs. This dev team isn't. I mean, they're talented. They're not talented. They're very talented. So they made a great shooter. They just didn't make anything unique. I mean, listen, if you don't believe me, X-Defiant. X-Defiant is basically Call of Duty multiplayer, but a step back. So it's like, well, people go X-Defiant's not doing great. Well, no kidding. Right? I mean, it's like you have to bring something. You have to bring something new to the table to encourage people.
Well, I mean, their character designs are egregious. It's a sin.
Well, there's that too.
I've never seen anything like that. Like, did they try to do? Was that something they did on purpose? Like Repellent or something? Like, don't buy our. Like, help. I mean, honestly, I know. Okay, I'm shallow, whatever. But game characters as a whole are getting fucking hideous, and I can't stand it anymore. Right? Like, I actively avoid the games where you got the women with the fucking crimson chin, right? And, you know, all these, like, what the hell are these characters? Like, I don't know what the hell they're thinking.
Yeah.
Right? Like, fucking just give us some good characters.
Marine come under fire for that.
Yeah, fucking, I seen that too, man. The girl in that, as it looks like she's got a Jay Leno chin, right?
Yeah, but she's supposed to be hard, right? Like, she's supposed to be, like, kicking ass. Like, maybe that's what it is.
I bet.
Yeah,
but I was going to say, like, before we move on, you know, you said about the cancelled karting game, right? I actually have a list here because one of the Rare developers, they put out a list of cancelled projects. Like, they kept pitching to Microsoft, and Microsoft kept cancelling them.
I know Cameo 2 was one of them.
So, Ordinary Joe, Archangel, Perfect Dark Core, Cameo 2, Cascade, Banjo Karting, Urchin, Saberman Stampede, Soulcatcher, Banjo Kazooie, Savannah, Fast and the Furious, and Quest.
Yeah, I mean, they had. It's really weird the way that, you know, some of that stuff would have worked. And now, like myself and Mooch, right before Sea of Thieves came out, we interviewed the head of Rare, Craig Duncan, and we talked to him about, you know, Rare possibly doing, you know, going back and doing some of their old IP. And he made it pretty clear, Mooch, that he wasn't interested in Rare doing old stuff.
No.
Right? He's like, we'll sign off on it if a studio wants to do it.
Yes.
But we want to focus on new stuff. New material. We don't. Yep. We don't ever want to do any of that old stuff again. And, you know, I mean, to the credit, he was right with that. Like, I doubt that they would ever go back and do anything. But so Battletoads, they found a company to do that. Killer Instinct, they found a company that did that. That was actually ended up turning out really good. Killer Instinct. I really enjoyed that. For what it was. I think what I liked about that was there was a lot of story in that game. Like, you didn't have to necessarily play online. I played a lot of the story and all the characters, and, you know, I put a lot of time in that game. But yeah, I would love to see them bring back. So, man, I was a Viva Pinata fan. I played that game for hundreds of hours back in the day. I always said, God bless.
I love Viva Pinata.
Everyone, like, crap. Everyone was coming around to that game, but I wasn't coming around. I don't know how you guys played that for that long.
I liked it, man, because it's relaxing. You know what I mean? Which, like, there's some games where if you're going to play it, you have to say, okay, I got to have at least a few hours set aside to play it. And there's some games like Viva Pinata, you can hop in, play it for, 20, 30 minutes, and then hop out. And I like those type of games from time to time.
Random segue. Have you guys played Cult of the Lamb?
I platinumed it.
I
know you did, Mooch.
Yeah. I loved it. I really did.
If you like
it was good, man. It was
Viva
good.
Pinata,
well, I think
100% play Cult of the Lamb. It's just like a.
It was a little more
like
action,
a dark humor version.
But it was a little more action based, I think, than Viva Pinata.
Yeah, of course, yeah. But it's like it has those elements, right? But a really dark humor version where you're like killing and sacrificing people and torturing them and shit. You know, it's just really funny.
They even got a little more warped with the DLC or what they've added. So go over and check that out. I got a couple of super chats here, and then I want to get Singer on the mic here. Shout out to Firefighter Alf, by the way. He says, Mooch, you're right. The problem is all the companies have talent, but they rinse and repeat that what's been done. Need to bring a new element, new tactics, power, something to it. I agree, Alf. Great to have Alf here, by the way. DC Gaming, he says, you may need to extend the podcast for an hour to accommodate Nib's long-form answers. Just kidding. Cheers for a good show. And welcome back to the NFL. That's right. I should have had that playing in the background. Lord Metroid said 3D platformer, ? Bring it on. Nintendo blood here. Shout out to the great Lord Metroid. Domino Zero says the NFL is back. Fly Eagles, fly, go Ravens, crap. So you got crap on your side with the Ravens, but I got news for you. Those Giants are coming for you, Zero. All right, the great Viewmaster, he says, Freeze here. The great J-Dub had mentioned he's back tomorrow night, so shout out to Viewmaster617. Rambling Entertain says Astrobot director said no to VR, but when it comes to PC, he said, we want to hear from you. Absolutely, we want to hear from you. He did say that. I remember that. Rambling, great point. Rambling comes back and says, if Sony wants to get into live service, make a Monster Hunter clone with Horizon, a survival game with The Last of Us, and an ARPG, ALA, just like Diablo.
Their next flop is Fair Game, dude. That's going to be the one.
Well, let me tell you some crap. You know, I'm not going to say you're wrong. I'm not going to sit here and say you're wrong after what just happened over the past 2-3 weeks, but I would say this much. If you think that's going to release without it extremely under that microscope, I don't know, crap. I think it either does it gets delayed beyond.
Microsoft canceled stuff.
Right.
They really trusted. They trusted. Bungie, and I don't know if that turned out to be a good thing or a bad thing. But it's like some of the interesting things that sounded like they were interesting to me, like the factions multiplayer game. You know, they canceled that, but released Concord. They canceled that Spider-Man multiplayer game that sounded kind of fun.
Well, here's the
Spider-Man.
So, crap. Here's the thing. So the numbers are out there, and I don't know, Nib. You have an Encyclopedia Britannica on everything that happened. So Nib, tell me where I'm right and I'm wrong here. But crap, to answer your question is, I think when they went to go look at Firewalk, I think this game was 90% done. 80% done. And they were like, okay, we're going to absorb this team. They already did most of the work. We'll fund the rest of it, and they'll put it out there. Now, am I saying that that's what they should have done? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But, if the game was ready to rock and roll, they put it out there. Let me put it this way, crap. You could say that it was crazy they put it out there. They cut it after 2 weeks. So they cut their losses. They're not going to have the team working on it and paying for all this and that. They're not doing it.
Yeah,
they're like, no, we're not doing it.
I think that team's cooked.
They may be cooked. I don't know. I think they're going to utilize the talents of that team. Because, again, anybody in the chat that did play, and Singer, let me ask Singer, I want you to sound off on your thoughts, of course, on Concord. Of course, RIP, that's done. But Singer, you did play it, and you said you were playing with your friends in Discord. And you said that there was nothing fundamentally wrong with the game. You said there was just nothing great about the game. Is that? And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you never said anything that was like, well, the game, plays horrible. You just said that it didn't do anything. Everyone was kind of like, okay, on to the next.
Yeah, that is essentially what I said. It's like, okay, this is cool, but it's just there's no comparison to. Like, it's just a bad version of a bunch of games I play. Because I play the Valorant, I play the Overwatch, I played the closed beta of Marvel Rivals, which unfortunately released alongside Concords, which was a detriment. Because I'd hop from one to the other, and you just knew the difference straight away. There was no sugarcoating it, and you're like, see, they could have done something good, or they should have stuck with their guns and just made it an arena shooter. Because if you made it an arena shooter, we're talking about a completely different game, right? But they went hero shooter without the aspects of a hero shooter. Overwatch showed you how to do it in 2016, right? They gave you the template. Here's your shooter. Here's your hero shooter.
Right.
But they completely ignored it, and they ended up where they are. And it's like, well, you were shown how to do it, and you still fumbled the bag. So you deserve whatever result you get. And the result was the people spoke with their wallets. They said,
Singer, you make a great point. And I'm going to bring this point up probably because I'm more hungry than anything right now. But if you're going to open up a pizza place next to a pizza place, you better have more than just cheese slices. The other place is already, right? They're going to be doing a pasta slice. They've got a chicken marsala slice. Nib, I know that you're stealing some of my ideas right now. That's fine. But but I mean, you gotta have, he makes a good point, Nib, right? I mean, he says basically they gave them the blueprint for how to do a hero shooter. They needed to add something. What are you bringing to it?
We all said this. Like, the thing is, like I said, like in 2024, when the competition is this rich and this comprehensive, you really have to come with way more, right? Like, the execution has to be really on point, and the content unlocks and everything, progression, it just wasn't really there. Like, I don't know, it's a weird one to me. And maybe, like you said, Mooch, maybe because a lot of the production had already been done or whatever, they just thought, we might as well put it out. But they didn't seem to put that much or any marketing behind it.
Yeah.
Like, outside of and I was having this conversation with someone else, and I was saying, like, maybe, like, again, we don't know for sure, but maybe PlayStation really do think of themselves as like, like the HBO of gaming, and they value the perception so much that they don't want to be marketing something that could be a critical flop, especially if they think they might be closing it down. Because look at the push they put behind Astrobot, like the amount of marketing they've done globally in Hong Kong, in Germany, in United Kingdom with Champions League and everything like that. They have gone all out, and it may not necessarily even be because it's a commercial thing. They want, it's more like this is it's a flagship for the quality barometer that you can expect for PlayStation. Like, it's good for the brand, and even just quickly, that the chat said I talk too much, so I'm just going to keep short. But yeah, even the point about the sales, it actually does not have to sell that much to be profitable, because as far as I've read, it's 67 developers or 62, I can't remember what, over 3 years. On an average Japanese gaming salary, that's under $10 million to develop Astrobot. So even if it sold 700k, it's making a profit. So it doesn't actually have to sell that much, but it will be a profitable title nonetheless.
I mean, I can't wait for the MPDs. And another problem was the characters. Like, that's what stuck to me when they did the release. Because I'm sure everyone was sat there when they did the whole Guardians of the Galaxy routine in the diner. And they tried to make it a joke. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing? Why are you doing this? No one cares. No one gives a crap about your character backstories. They shouldn't have done that either. They should have copied Overwatch again. Overwatch gives you the character backstories. Guess where they are? On YouTube.
Yeah,
where they belong. If you care enough, you'll go check them out.
Go check them out.
They're not in the game. They're not in the game. No, it's, go to YouTube, go watch the master, their animation team is on point. Shout out to Blizzard's animation team. They are top tier. But it's like, you try to do all this, and you just fail completely across the board. And I call it the biggest failure out of all three, because there's nothing, I've seen nothing like this, where you put this out, and you're like, did you really believe it was going to sell, though? Were you like, let's just throw it out and see what happens?
Dessinger, let me ask you a question, though, right? Because you said it's the biggest flop. Is it a bigger flop to put out a game that reviews poorly, doesn't have much interest or engagement, and then continue to support it and whatever for a few months or for a year or whatever? Or is it less of a flop to just cut your losses short and then just move on to the next thing straight away, and therefore save money?
Well, I mean, it's a flop regardless, because it came out to critical failure. So,
but I think, like, the reason I'm asking is, I kind of hear the talk online is that because it was cut so short, like 2 weeks or whatever, it's the biggest flop. But to me, that's like a good business decision, because rather than string something along that is not getting any engagement, not making you money, and costing you money over the long run, to me, this is like a more sensible business decision. So yes, it is a failure, obviously, but it's them recognizing it in a really savvy way and just being like, do you know what? Forget it. Bam. Just on to the next one. If they had kept this going and bled out, it would have been worse, I think.
Well, he makes a point that
I would have checked.
Just to reinforce what Nib's saying, and maybe I got to order a pie while we're doing this, this show here. But a buddy of mine, Nib, he really did. He had a pizzeria, and he had a pizzeria in New York City. New York City pizzeria, they used to sell artichoke hearts right on the pizza. I know a lot of you guys are going, "What? That's horrible." It sold really well in the city. When he went upstate, maybe like an hour and a half upstate, he started making it. Wasn't doing well. He took it off the menu after 2 or 3 weeks. He's like, it's not selling. I'm throwing pies out. I can't sell slices. Why is it selling big in Brooklyn and I can't sell it upstate? Here's my point. Which is better? To keep trying it to see if you grow an audience and keep throwing the pizzas out? Or do you just get rid of it off the menu? That's kind of what Nib's saying there. Seeds, go ahead. Don't get me wrong. No way to spin this, Singer. It's a flop. There's no way around it. It absolutely was. Seeds, go ahead.
They're probably going to close that studio.
Wait, say it again?
They're not. I said they're probably going to close that studio. They're not going to keep them around.
I don't think so, Crap. I don't think so.
You don't think? I mean, they just spent $200 million.
No, so here's the thing. Like, when it comes to Concord, I felt that whenever it came out that it had a chance to do decent because of strictly the gun mechanics and what they were able to do with the weapons. If you played Concord, if you actually played it, the actual game felt good to play.
Yeah.
The shooting mechanics of the actual game was good to play with. It just did not do well in the presentation of being released. That studio, for what I've been told, because I specifically asked, that studio is not in any danger of being shut down. When PlayStation got involved with that project, there was a risk versus reward benefit in getting involved and taking over that studio with Concord at the point that it was at. I have been told emphatically that Helldivers 2, Concord, Marathon, and there is one more that is going to release at some point. I'm assuming this is the fair game. They are being utilized strictly to collect data. That's what they're being utilized for. And so Helldivers 2 just so happened to do a hell of a job and sold a lot of copies. Concord, they cut their losses and said, we're not going to keep this product out. And the thing that they did that I honestly was impressed by, and the reason that it makes sense to me on the collection of the data side, they gave the money back instead of just dragging it out and saying, hey, we're going to keep trying to force this down your throat. They collected the data and saw it wasn't working. What they did was not working. And so now they're able to take that and apply it to these other games. Okay, this game, we can't sell it for $40. People are not going to buy this. I don't think that we have seen the last of Concord in its, maybe not in its current shape of what its current offering is. I do not think we've seen the last of Concord as an IP
if they change
and what they're going to do with it.
If they change it enough, like I gave a couple of examples.
Nobody wanted to play that game when it was a free beta. I don't think they can bring it back.
I don't think that it's going to come out as a PvP game. I think that they're going to take it in-house, gather feedback. There was a lot of feedback that came of what they wanted. People wanted Concord to be if they were going to put it out, and it wasn't what they did.
All you had to do was
I think that what we're going to see is them pulling it down and allowing that studio to go in and make changes based on the feedback, and then release it as a free-to-play game with PvE involved into the game. I really think that's what they're going to do with it. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. I was just saying, like, if you look at it from the very first trailer that they showed, it was like, hundreds of thousands of dislikes, no likes hardly. The comments were like very much telling people, I don't understand why developers just don't go to the people and say, now, what kind of characters are you looking for? What do you like? What do you dislike? Like, do some testing well before you show something off like this. Because if you look at I'm looking at the Fair Games trailer on PlayStation's thing right now, and it is inundated. Look, here's some of the comments. Concord Part 2, more Concord than ever. Witness the definition of crazy, doing things over and over again to see if it works. Here's another one. Just like Concord, I'm forced to ask, who is this for? It has modern audience written all over it. Eat the rich, and the game is the most corpo vision ever. This reeks of Concord and will end like Concord. The characters in this look horrible. The gameplay looks generic. Like, this is like, learn the lesson.
Yeah.
I think save yourself some money, because
I think what you're saying,
looks terrible.
What I think you're saying though is this is I think it's under the microscope. We don't have a release date for Fair Games. That might come out 2 years from now. They might be going back to the drawing board. I don't know.
So I think that's the what he just put out there. I do think that they are utilizing the data. I've said, I mean, Mooch, when did I start coming on here? Like earlier this year.
Yeah.
And I was talking about the data. They want the data from these games, and people keep talking about the money. I don't think that they are at the point yet to where they're saying, okay, Concord was just a huge waste of money for us. Now, on Twitter, and the Twitter businessmen and everyone who has, bachelor degrees in business are like, well, it's a waste of money. They're throwing money down the toilet. There is a reason behind what they are doing. There's a reason behind what they're doing. And I think that in a couple years, I'm saying a couple years, we are going to see and go, aha, I understand why they wanted the data. And so I do think they're going to bring Concord back out in probably a different form. Fair Games, to be honest, I don't know enough about that game. I have no contacts at that studio. I don't know enough about it to speak to it, but I was told that there was another game other than the three I mentioned, Marathon, Concord, and Helldivers, that they were going to bank on collecting data. Well, guess what? They released Concord. It didn't work. It was what we would consider a horrible, launch and horrible disaster. Guess what? That's data. That's data that you've now collected to where we just made this game. It did not perform well. Now we can apply all these mistakes that we've made to ensure that the two projects that are unnamed down the road that are being worked on by some larger studios do not make these mistakes. Because there are going to be more games as a service games coming from PlayStation. That's 100% fact. Now, do I personally want them to go and go back to what PlayStation has been? I think we all probably do in some aspects. But that balance that we saw them increasing, the games as a service money that they're piling in, there's a reason for that. And so I do think that they have a little bit of money that they're willing to quote unquote waste in order to get the data. That's what they want. They want that data.
I do think that I think they'll step in, like you said, and we used to talk about this all the time back in the day. Phil and his team would always be, we're going to let the devs have their creative freedom. We're going to I think Sony lets them have their chance to be creative. Like, let's just use Bungie, for example. I think now with what's happened with Bungie and kind of how we're seeing the studio crumble in the sense that we knew them before, I still think they have a lot of talented people there. I think now Sony's stepping in and they're like, hey, we let you do your thing. Now we're stepping in.
Maybe they'll write it off.
Well, that's possible.
Well, there's questions about live service games being out for so long. What more data do you need? Dude, there is so much. I don't think people understand how much data there is to gather with live service games, because not all live service games are the same. Destiny 2 is not the same as The Division. The Division is not the same as, as Fortnite. There are different games. And if you want to build something that lasts long term, this is an extremely difficult niche to get into. That's why not a lot of people can do it. So you have to be willing to do this.
I gotta say, because I feel like the IP itself is kind of poisoned now, Concord. So if they did, I personally couldn't see them bringing it back, but unless it's a completely overhauled and different thing.
It would be a complete overhaul. It's the only way.
I bet they're. I bet Sony's talking to
Concord.
Sony's probably talking to the fair game developer, going, "Hey, let's get some titties bouncing on them character models. Let's get some women that look like women, some men that look like men."
The thing is, if you ask the public, right, that's literally what it's gonna be like. They're gonna be like, "Oh, just have every woman in a bikini."
Exactly. Hell yeah.
But I don't know, like.
The first descendant,
my wife's going to be looking at me like, why are you playing this game again?
Oh, for the gameplay, obviously, right? I play it if they got, if they did that, right? Like, hey, let me play it. Sure. Great gameplay, but also you can look at it and, like, people don't want to play ugly shit. Like we used to I remember back when the original Xbox came out with all the jiggle physics and you'd play volleyball games. Would anybody really fucking play a volleyball game if it was like characters that look like Concord? Hell no.
I think, like, if I was, obviously, because I don't necessarily agree with all this stuff, but like, if I was a developer at the end and you want to cater to everyone, right? But they should have a bit of everything. So have your sexy ass characters and have your ugly ass characters. Let people choose.
Sure. Let people make their own or whatever. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I think, like, if you go too far on one side or the other, there's potential issues. But
those Concord characters look like they fell out of an ugly tree and hit every damn branch on the way down. Like, what the hell were they thinking? Like, I've never met anybody that looks anything like any of those characters, right? Like, shit, honestly, nobody looks anything like that. So I don't know if somebody was like, man, I really want to see myself in this game, right? Like, who cares? Like, I'm a big fat fuck. I don't want to see myself in games. I want to see, like, I want to play guys, you know what I mean? I want to play as some tough ass.
That might be.
I don't want to play as somebody who looks like
that. May be the data that Seeds was talking about.
Nathan Drake. I loved using that skin. It was so funny because when you defeat someone in a overweight, obese race, it's like extra pain for them. I still love that.
Yeah, I could see that, but yeah, I mean, they went too far. Everybody's ugly in that thing. They're just like, there's nobody in this that looks, worthwhile, man. I'm watching Mooch's gameplay, and it's just ugly, people looking like the Incredible Hawk suit and shit, why?
Yeah, I don't know, but I think that's some of the data that maybe Seeds was talking about. They see that they've taken that data back from their consumers.
Hey, I could give them data for less than a few $100 million. I can tell them that it sucks.
Well, I would say this: the few $100 million thing. Look at how much money Helldivers 2 made. How much did Helldivers 2 cost to make, and how much did it make? Right? They made money off that. A shit ton of money.
I'm sure they did. Yeah,
and they're still making money. So if you look at the entire portfolio, you can't just base it off of one game. That's just not how.
You have to look at Helldivers though. Was very tongue in cheek. It was funny.
I'm talking to business. I'm not talking to. I'm not talking to game type. I'm talking.
Well, you have to ask why was it successful though, right? Why is it successful? Because it was, hey, tongue in cheek and like very much like Starship Troopers type of deal, right? People kind of resonated with that. Well, putting out a game that people resonate with, I think, is important. So why was that successful versus why Concord wasn't? Like people didn't resonate with Concord.
I understand. I'm not talking about the game. I'm talking about money. So when we're talking about wasting $200 million, we have to look at their entire portfolio of what they want to spend in games as a service. Okay? So if you have that pot of money that you say, this is how much we have to spend. We made this much on Helldivers 2. They own that IP, so they're going to make that money. You took a loss on Concord. But did you take a loss that is big enough to cut into the overall revenue stream that you're bringing in within that games as a service pot? And that's the question that we have to figure out, because from my understanding, this studio is allowing to be able to continue to work. They have trust and belief in them to continue working on these other projects. So all I'm saying is, yes, Concord was not a good release of a game. But I think that we have to look at their entire portfolio because other games as a service, because there are companies all the time trying to do games as a service, live service games. And how many of them have failed? And so I think that Sony has that money allocated to be able to take those hits if they happen. They obviously don't want to take the hit, but it's there if they need to.
To your point, Seeds, like I think Jim Ryan, he actually said, look, not all of them are going to hit. But some of them might.
They knew that.
I'm sure they didn't think they would cut 1 in 2 weeks.
No. But to that point as well, I believe, if I remember correctly, of the new batch of live service games that they have planned, they've only released 3 of them so far. So of the official live service,
they've canceled more than they've released.
Yeah. But of the ones that they've released, so far, it's
that's Sony's MO too.
Yeah, so MLB, Helldivers 2.
They don't just release it.
Yeah, so Helldivers 2, MLB, and Concord. So at the moment, of the ones they've released at least, there is 2 and 1 failure. So for them, it's probably still a decent average overall, especially Helldivers 2. Because remember, Helldivers 2 isn't just successful; it's actually the fastest-selling PlayStation game in history. So it's beyond successful. Like 10 million in whatever it was, like 12 weeks or something. Yeah,
they're
outrageous. 12 million.
Opposite ends of the spectrum as far as success and failure.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
So let me ask Eric. Eric, I want to ask you, and Eric, the reason I go to you here, it's kind of fun because Eric always says, I'm not the biggest multiplayer guy, which I wish he was, because I'd like to get Eric on more my Warzone streams here. But Eric, listen, real quick, Ryan Landis asked a question in the chat. He says, Mooch, let me ask you a question. How much of this was timing, if at all? So I know that you may say, look, I didn't play a lot of Concord. That's not my bag, which I completely respect. But we do always talk on the show, and I know that you've brought it up a number of times. Sometimes release of a game can kill a game. Do you think did timing play a role in this case?
I don't necessarily know if it was timing. For me, I don't know. It's hard to say. Just anecdotally looking at what everyone's saying about this game, I don't know if when they released it would have mattered at all. From the moment they announced it, the moment they showed it, everyone, was kind of like ho-hum on it. And granted, the people who did give it a chance and played it, they said they really dug it, but that doesn't necessarily mean that a game is going to resonate, with anybody either, So the biggest things that I heard people saying, it looked generic. The characters, the biggest thing I heard people say, it looked like some kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy ripoff. And if all of it is to be true, like when they started development on this game, and we've heard this before when it came to games like, Suicide Squad and this and that, it's like, was it a game that was chasing a trend at a time when the trend was popping and game development takes longer, and then they put it out and it seems like you're chasing everybody else or the things that are already there? It just seems like a comedy of errors, and maybe what Steve's is saying is true. It's like all about the data, and if that is the case, then for them it's no harm, no foul. I don't know, they'll move forward and do whatever they're going to do. But it just seemed like you could throw a rock and hit any different number of reasons why this game just didn't hit or didn't resonate. You know,
mm-hmm. No,
like
I
the
agree.
core character designs, the pricing, the whole nine. And again, we have gamers who are, in our bracket who will pay for something, but a lot of gamers, the audiences that you're trying to grab, they've been conditioned to get a lot out of a game that's free to play.
Yeah.
Character customization, skins, all these different things. And, and it's hard to break into that. We've seen other games try to break into this type of arena, and it just doesn't hit.
It's funny because I always say we have short-term memory in the gaming community, right? We said this beforehand. It's hard. You just said it, E. It's hard to break into that and make money into that sector, right? So you have a game like Helldivers that Nib just told you broke records in multiple facets for Sony, and then you have one that broke records in the opposite direction. I think for every, what do they say? I don't even think it's 33%. I think it's probably 10%. For every 10 games you try to do as a live service, maybe one will hit. And I think maybe I'm being too gracious. I don't know what the number is. It's low, though. It's very low. There's been other games that have been really, really good, really polished games. They didn't make it either. So,
Yeah, and I'll say this, Mooch. I'm not, again, I'm on record, I'm not the biggest multiplayer person. But I'm also one of the people that kind of sit back and say, it doesn't mean that they shouldn't be trying to break into that. Too many times, in particular, older heads, we want to pigeonhole and keep things the way that we like them, the way that they are and the way that we were. But we're, Sony likes our money because we have kids and we have this and that and we do spend money. But you're thinking future, you're like, you guys are done.
Yeah.
We only have so much more time with you, and then we're moving into this.
Like I felt, in one of your podcasts, Mooch, a lot of us were saying like this is going to be dead on arrival, or at least we think it will be, right?
Yeah.
But I did just want to ask the panel, like, did anyone here actually buy the game? Like, because I played the beta, it didn't sell me enough to buy the game. Did anyone here actually buy it?
I can speak for a lot of the people on. I don't think Singer. Did you end up? No, he played the beta. I'll tell you, Mike. I don't
Concord.
Yeah, Concord.
I gave out codes.
Yeah, I was gonna say I didn't know if you want to reveal sources, but go ahead, D.
No, I had no desire for it, man. Mm-hmm. When that game was being revealed for the first time, I actually thought it was gonna be like some type of single player campaign, and then when we saw it was a live service action game, I just totally tuned out. And then the characters and everything else that came with it, I had zero interest.
Yeah,
and clearly they had an idea for the game, because they were like, before it launched, they were ready to give out beta code. Hey, if you pre-order, we'll give you X amount of beta codes, and then they had to walk that back.
Right.
Sort of like, well, no one's really checking for these beta codes, so now it's going to be kind of open to everybody. I don't know. Again, there are people who really love the game, but then right there, you kind of had some of your evidence of where this may be going.
I was curious to see. My curiosity, Nib, was going to be this, okay? Because we already saw during the open beta, we heard crap. We've heard Death Singer already say the numbers. The numbers were abysmal on Steam, right? During the open beta, they were awful.
Yeah.
I don't even know if they peaked over 400 or 600. I don't know.
No, so the beta was over 2,000. I think it was 2,600.
Oh, was it? Well, that's not.
But that's why I felt that the beta did the opposite thing. It turned people off. It did for me. Don't get me wrong. I enjoyed the game, but like I said before, like after that, I felt like I'd had my fill of this game, which didn't have enough content unlocks. It goes back
to what you were also saying about, like, I'm trying to do a 1-for-1 here. What you said about Metascore, you're like, and you have Astro sitting at a 94. I was already excited for Astro. Now I'm that much more. You played a beta that was seemingly already dead on arrival. So even if you were enjoying it, I will say a bit of the wind came out of your sails. You're looking around basically, and there's nobody playing.
It's one of those things where it's like you play it and you enjoy it. You aren't blown away by it. You enjoy it, but it's like, okay, well, why do I need to buy this to keep playing this, really, what more am I going to get from it?
Here's the thing.
And it reminds me of, Destiny, the beta. This had the opposite thing where people played the beta and were blown away, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they got the final game and they were like, wait, basically the beta was the whole game.
The beta was the game. Yeah,
and even though consumer-wise it's bad, marketing-wise it's great. Because you build the hype, you build the excitement. You have that, I need to go back in for more. If this is already what I get in this, then I definitely need to jump in and unlock more. Whereas I almost felt like Concord had the opposite effect. By the end, you already ran out of steam and you already had no desire to unlock any more.
Someone had said something to me that made a lot of sense. They had said, because it's a pro and con, right? The pro was you paid $40, you get everything, right? You're entitled to everything in the game. You bought the game. The con to that, though, is one of the things that I love about a battle. I know when people go, that's the thing. We have to make our minds up. You either love a battle pass or you don't. You guys know I'm on record. I play Warzone all the time. If you play Warzone, you buy the $10 battle pass. If you play the game, you get enough COD points to actually buy the battle pass again 50 days later. So I've only paid, usually each game that comes out, I'll pay the battle pass once, and then I just get the COD points and I'm able to buy the battle pass. But by playing and continuing to play the game, I get weapons, I get skins, I get finishing moves. I'll get weapon skins. You get camos. The point I'm trying to give here is if they're giving it all to you and there's no ultimate and there's no, it just felt like you were kind of like after I played it for a full weekend. Shout out to J-Dub and Link and Soldier that's here in the chat and a lot of others that were out there playing with us. Like that was like I had a good time playing the game. And as a person that plays way too much Battle Royale, I was looking for something else to scratch that itch, right? Like, I was like, okay, I've been playing Warzone forever. If there was a cool another multiplayer, but after a while, it got a little bit, repetitive a bit. But all these games kind of get repetitive a bit. I can't blame Concord for that. I don't know. I can tell you this much. To answer Ryan Landis' question, I do not believe that it was a timing thing. I don't think if that game came out in February, all of a sudden you would have seen the number go from 2,000 on Steam to 20,000. I don't quite feel that way.
It was DOA, man. DOA.
Yeah, it really was. But it will be interesting to see that. Listen, the jury's out, right? We'll see what Seeds is saying. They're collecting data. I do believe it's a talented team at Firewalk, so I think they're going to retain those folks. They made a competent shooter. The problem is it just didn't bring anything to the table. It didn't bring a game. It wouldn't make you leave a game.
The thing is, I already know what their next game's called.
What is it? I can't wait for this one, Singer.
Titanic.
Oh, jeez. He's just...
maybe Hindenburg.
Oh, let me tell you guys something.
All they need to do with this game was make it a single player experience with the multiplayer tacked on, similar to like what Space Marines 2 is doing.
Mm-hmm.
Space Marines has a campaign and has the PvP stuff, right?
Yep.
So it's adding some value. Well, I'm hearing the PvP stuff is good anyways, but regardless, it's like adding some value. You know that Sony, players, they value the single player narrative games.
Yep.
So do that and tack that on. I think it would have did a lot better. And at the very least, when they released this, it should have been free, man. Should have been free. I think they would have had. I don't know. I don't know what they were thinking. I feel bad for the devs because honestly, like we can clown it in the whole console war stuff. Sure, it's funny and it's it's a point, whatever. But these devs actually spent 8 years of their life creating it. So imagine creating 8 years. Spending 8 years of your life creating something and it's not well received. That's got to be hard.
It is hard.
The studio head actually clarified because I was one of the people who mentioned the 8-year thing, and I think Seeds he confirmed no that's not really how it went. But they have actually, I think yesterday they put out a tweet or something clarifying, and they said, look, before the studio was formed, it was just like ideas on a napkin. It wasn't actually development. And I think they said actual production was 4 years. Like actual full production.
That's still a long time to work on something.
So it was like 3 to 4 years.
Yeah, it's still a long time. Not quite,
it's still a long time, yeah.
But not quite 8, but yes, it is still a long time. Just speaking of that, because I do want to talk about, guys, we are going to talk about the PS5 Pro, and I do want to talk about Stalker 2 and what's going on with that game. But before that, since we've talked so much about Space Marine 2, Singer, I'll let you take the microphone here first. But crap, I would like you to tune in on this because so many times on Crossfire, we've talked about games and you go, Mooch, listen, I'm glad you were excited for it, but I'm not excited for it. That's not my bag. I happen to think the minute I saw this game, I said, this is Crap Gamer's bag. This is his game. This is a game he would like to play. And I'll tell you why, but I'll let Singer finish what he wants to say about the game because he's been playing it in not what you would call early access, but if you bought the deluxe edition, you get to play it 3-4 days earlier because it released today for people with early access who bought the deluxe edition, but someone like me who might pick it up next week on the 9th, for the $60 tag. But Singer, finish what you were going to say. I want to hear what you have to say about the game, then I want to tell Crap why I think this is really up his alley.
All right, this game is quintessential Warhammer. This is so fantastic. Right, so to start with graphics. This has to be one of the best, most visual stunning games this entire generation.
It does look good. It does look good.
No doubt. This has to be. The particle effects are on point. Everything is... It's a dark game, but that's Warhammer's style. It's dark, gritty, shitty universe. Everything's absurdly horrible, and you're gonna die in a million different ways, right? So it's supposed to be dark. It's not a happy time, not a happy place. Everyone's miserable as shit. Right, cool. So the aesthetics follow that. It's got that gothic feel that Space Marine needs, like medieval times. They nailed it on point. Now, the engine, shout out to the engine, because this will be the unsung hero, because it's the Saber Swarm engine, which they used for World War Z.
Yeah, this is their own proprietary engine, correct, Singer? Yes.
And this proves that you can do great things with your own engine, because the way they handle the swarms, like the amount of hordes coming to you, it's fluid. Like, you can see them off in the distance, so you gotta prepare yourself. You're like, oh shit, they're coming. All right, let's go into this fray. The combat is fluid, and it is what a Space Marine should be. It's big, punchy, hitty. You're smashing people. The parry system's good. It takes a bit of Souls combat from that. A bit from Software you could see in there with the whole parry system. Overall, the combat is fast, fluid, but it has the punch. Because you are a super soldier inside 1 ton of power armor, and it feels like you are inside 1 ton of armor. You feel heavy. Then you have the shooting, which is good. The multiplayer, which is fantastic. And I'm so glad they actually nailed the multiplayer, because that was a big thing for the first game. If you played it, everyone loved the multiplayer. The story, I won't go into it because spoilers.
Okay.
Just know that it is linear, but it doesn't feel linear. Like, when you get to further into the game, you'll be grand battlefields, and you might go, well, this is a little bit linear, but it doesn't feel it. Like, there's rockets flying everywhere, there's shit falling from the sky, there's jets flying around, there's bombs going off everywhere. It feels like you're actually there. It draws you into the action, and it's really, really well done. And the set pieces... chef's kiss. Like, the set pieces are just so well done. You expect this big thing to happen, and it culminates, and it culminates, and it culminates, and then it just boom.
So let me ask you,
particle effects.
Let me ask you this. First of all, everything that Singer's saying, I haven't played it yet, but I have watched reviews on it. I've watched people playing it, and it looks amazing. I gotta say, so Crap. Everything that Singer said, I can tell right now. You're probably going, so where are you selling me on this? I shout out to Brian East in the chat. He just said it. It is basically Crap, honestly. And tell me if I'm wrong, Singer. It's Gears of War in space. Now, it's not 1 for 1. It's not 1 for 1. There's things that Space Marine does that Gears didn't, and vice versa. But Crap, this game has the motion, the movement, the feel, that gritty that Singer's talking about, that very gruesome, everything's just bloody, tears apart. The same way you were able to do with the Lancer and do your thing. This is a game, I would say, third party, that's really up your alley. Crap, have you seen it? Have you seen?
Yeah, I've seen some stuff on it. It looks interesting. I'll probably give it a try along the way. But it's not something that I was like, oh my gosh, you know what I mean? Like, for whatever reason. And like, that could be part of me recently. It's like, I spend more time, and maybe not hate to admit it, I play more retro stuff and more Nintendo lately, as I found the modern stuff that's coming out just not appealing to me. Like, I mean, I'll still play like the college football game or Madden and, stuff like that. But it's like, a lot of the games that are coming out, just they aren't as interesting to me as they once were. You know, the stuff that I liked, a lot of it's been ruined. And, you know, like this game looks interesting for sure. But a lot of times, and maybe it's just because I'm getting older and old or something. I don't know. It's like I'm that crotchety old man yelling to the cloud, you know, like I don't understand. You know, and so it's just like a lot of this stuff. I'm like, maybe this stuff isn't for me anymore.
Are you excited to follow Captain Stu Nuts on his new adventure in Black Ops 6?
Yeah, I mean that's exciting as always. You know, I like to play through the 4 or 5 hour campaigns and kind of enjoy myself on that. Like the new Gears E-Day looks good to me. I'm just waiting to see if they ruin that. You know what I mean? Like Marcus is non-binary or something. You know what I mean?
Why Gears E-Day and not Space Marine 2 though?
Yeah, I really think Space Marine's up your alley.
I think because like Gears was something that I mean, I got a Gears tattoo. I got a Crimson Omen, like a big ass Crimson Omen tattooed on me. I've been a Gears fan since day one. That's why I bought an Xbox 360, man. I saw Cliffy B playing it.
Is it in the middle of your back?
No, it's on my arm, man. People, I get it all the time. People are like, Gears of War, and I'm like, yeah, but only the first 3. You know, I got to put that in there. I got mine before 4 and 5 came out. To be clear, you know, before it became Kate Diaz.
Craps
but yeah, it's
like a 1-3 underneath this tattoo. Yeah.
Yes, 1 through 3, great. Yes. That's like one of the greatest trilogies ever. So that's why E-Day kind of appeals to me personally. Like this game, I think looks okay, but like that lore, I don't know. Maybe it's because like when you're younger, you know, Mooch, like. When the Star Wars prequels came out, like I'm a prequel guy.
Yep.
I wasn't really old. I wasn't born in time for the first 2 Star Wars games. So Star Wars movies, excuse me. So I never saw those in theater. So when I saw the prequels, I was like, oh, this is awesome, right? And so it's like I can understand though why the people who grew up when they were kids when they saw the originals didn't like them because one thing, they're not that age, they're not that kind of, you know, it's not that wow factor anymore. You know, so it's like that for me with Gears. Like there's a lot of games that I think, oh, it's kind of like Gears, you know, third party, whatever, you know, third person lock and load type thing.
Yep.
And then I play it and it just doesn't grab me like that. I think the thing with Gears was it came out at a time, you know, I was relatively young and I had never seen really anything like that before. And, you know, they were selling me on the 360, man. Cliffy B was playing it on G4 TV.
Yeah.
You know, Adam Sessler and Morgan Webb. This was before the 360 was even out. And I was like, holy shit. You know, I got to get me a 360. You know what I mean? And so that's what that was all about. And I love those first 3 games. And they were so, like, badass. And, yeah, they're dude bro shooters. But who cares? You know, that's what made them great. You know, and now I just feel like a lot of that kind of stuff is lost. Like, remember when they're like, "Hey, no cigarette smoking in Gears," and let's not call it Gears of War anymore. It's just Gears. Like they try to get hipster with it, and I'm just like shaking my head the whole time I'm hearing all this stuff. You know, so
and like Xbox or whatever.
Eric,
I think you'll like it.
No, but I just wanted to say, have you had this is the thing that got lost? Have you had that feeling like we all had when we first saw Cliffy B playing Gears? That is what Xbox has lost. Mooch and I have been saying that on this show for over a couple of years now. That culture, all that stuff, what that made people hype, that is what they've been missing for the last couple of gens.
Yep. Yeah. Just don't have
absolutely.
it.
Exactly what you're saying right now. Like, that's exactly
like I'll be honest. I used to get that feel about like a lot of different games. Like God of War 2018 is one of those. I look at that as a 10 out of 10 game. And, you know, that was just like something I was just like, wow, this one might be a little bit controversial, but when I played Detroit Become Human, I thought that was one of the best stories in a game I'd ever played. And I played that back to back to back, like 3 straight times because it was that immersive and that many changes to the endings and the characters. And, you know, people can live or die depending on your choices. Like, I thought that was like, wow. Oh, dude, it's phenomenal. It's one of the best games I ever played. You know, and, you know, it's like, it's been a long time since I've really kind of experienced something like that. I remember, let me think, like Ghost of Tsushima was kind of like that for me. I played through that and I was just like, wow, you know, was so good. But like on the Xbox side lately, yeah, nothing really. I mean, I played through Hellblade 2 and I didn't even get all the way through that. I was like, it's a very good looking game. It's visceral, but there's nothing there story-wise. You know, it's funny, like wowing
It's funny
me,
you say that because like the one thing with Hellblade 2 is it felt like it lacked any of the originality that we get, that wow factor that we got in the first one. I didn't get that in the second one. Kind of like bad example here because everyone's gonna Google it and be like, what is that? But like the original Teen Wolf with Michael J. Fox was like groundbreaking.
You're showing our age,
right? But then, you remember
the next one with Jason Bateman didn't hit the same.
Yeah,
right?
the one with Jason Bateman. It was like they just literally did a clone copy, and it was like it just didn't do it. It was like, this is bad, and you're like, how can you say this is bad when it's just like the first one? I'm like, because it's literally just like the first one. I think it's the same script. So I think that.
Are you saying about Hellblade 2?
Yeah,
I'm gonna have to defend Hellblade 2 here.
Nib, the fact that you are Hellblade 2's defense lawyer
I'm gonna have to
absolutely amazing to me.
Hellblade 2 here.
Please defend. Can you tell me? Because I completed it.
So
I completed it on Xbox. I got the platinum on PlayStation. But
I
the second one's
understand why
tough to play.
people prefer the story in the first one, because the first one is much more about the mental health turmoil and abstract discussions on that, right?
Which I thought was very interesting.
Yeah, the sequel does touch on that, but it's not as much. It's more of an adventure with the mythos and everything, and with the gods and everything through that thing. And these mental health elements are a rerun, but they're not really the focus. It's more about her like growth and her coming to terms with her issue, whereas the whole first game is her struggling with the turmoil and only at the end coming to terms with it. Here it's like she's already come to terms with it, but now how does she utilize that in this adventure and journey that she's on? Now I will say, even though I enjoyed the story, I hated the ending. In fact, the ending story, and I don't want to spoil it, it almost retroactively ruined the whole story for me, but I was kind of like, we'll just put it to one side and I'm just going to enjoy the journey that it took me on, and I liked it, because, she deals with so many adversities. She has more companions this time. It's more theatrical, it's more bombastic, it has more like set pieces and everything with each of the giants she takes on. So I personally enjoyed all of that stuff. Again, I'm not saying it's like it was phenomenal or anything like that. It was very, very rudimentary and bare bones in terms of actual gameplay. It was more like experiential. But maybe when I played it at the time I was in my gaming like cycle, it was a good palate cleanser. Because sometimes
that's fair.
Games hit at different times, don't they? Like,
absolutely.
I remember the first time I played Breath of the Wild, I actually disliked it. I remember thinking, what are these guys on crack? All these journalists, like, this boring ass thing. Like, literally, I'm walking around aimlessly and I'm cooking. Like, why do I want to be cooking, walking around? And it just didn't grip me. And then I played it, I think it was like 7 months later. And it actually ended up being in my top 10 games of all time. Like, I was enthralled. And I think what it is the mood for it. And you kind of have to play certain games a certain way. So Breath of the Wild, you can't be playing it constantly wanting fulfillment. Like, I need this, I need that. It's kind of like, get lost in the world. Don't worry about progression. If you see something you like in the distance, make your way to it. Don't worry about what you're going to find, what it could be, or unlocking the next big thing. Just go on your journey. And Hellblade 2, it's a little bit like that. Is you just got to engross yourself in this adventure that she's on, without wanting this or that or the other. But yeah, I get it. I understand why people dislike it.
Yeah. Now, I do want to switch subjects here because, D, having you on the show tonight, there was a few things that kind of happened between last week's show, this week's show, and I want to get your take on it. And I know you've been very vocal over the past 7 days on this. And I'm blending two of my topics, but really the question is the latter part. So, the Xbox boss of Phil himself, he said in quotes, and this is, I believe, an older interview, he said something, I've made some of the worst game choice decisions, and that's end quote. That's not necessarily what I'm referring to when it comes to, because I think he was talking about some choices that he passed on, like Destiny. People were also saying, maybe some of the Marvel deals that were early on that he passed. That's what he was referring to. So I'm not trying to take one and make two with this conversation. But the problem here is the Xbox Series S. I've been saying it for a long time. I think, D, you've been very vocal as of recent, if not for maybe 6 months now. The Series S is supposed to be running Stalker 2 at 30 FPS. And the one thing that I said here, it's not about piling on. It's really just a question here is, as this generation continues to go, forget the PS5 Pro for a minute. As this generation continues to grow, these games are going to be more and more and more demanding. The Xbox Series S was running into problems even when we were talking about earlier games in the generation. So I said on the show ages ago, I said something along the lines of, I just said, this is going to be very taxing for the Series S. And a lot of people are like, oh, Mooch, you don't know what you're talking about. They built this thing with the architecture of NASA. All right. So, D, here we are. My question to you is what's your take on the Stalker 2 game? But everyone's been waiting on their hands and knees to play this game on Xbox at 30 FPS. And do you think Microsoft will end this generation early? Because I don't think they can just remove the S. The S is probably what the majority of their console gamers own right now. So I don't think they can say to devs, you don't have to make it for the S, you just make it for the X. I don't think they can do that at this point in time in the generation. Will they end the generation early?
Okay, so just to make everything short, way back when the Series S was launched, yeah, I was on board. I thought the price point was good.
Yeah.
Some of the developers were speaking out at that point that the memory was going to be an issue, and we should have listened to them because they're the ones that actually create the damn games.
Right.
And, throughout the whole generation, games have been struggling. Yeah, a lot of games did get on there. These delays are more recent, starting from like last year with Baldur's Gate, and like this year Wukong, and the Dune developer is saying it's going to be challenging to bring the game over to the Series S, and because of that, they're bringing it to the PC first, and then they're going to bring it to the consoles. So the Series S is a problem. It's going to get worse. Games are going to become more demanding. Now, I don't think they're going to end the generation early because I don't think that's a choice. I don't think that's an option.
Okay.
From what I'm hearing, looks like they're going to bring their new console in 2026. We're hearing 2026, 2027, the next Xbox drops.
Yeah.
So, and PlayStation, I'm hearing it's going to be, 2027, like the year after, whatever, right? So, they're not going to really end it early, but they're going to run into the situation more often now because games are becoming more demanding, and they have this certification policy in effect, which just doesn't make sense because not only does the Xbox Series X suffer, the S suffers as well. But if the game's going to be delayed because they can't get it running properly on the S anyways, why not bring it out to the X? And of course, it's going to be coming to the competing platforms like the PlayStation 5. That'd be a much better optic than all of your consumers not being able to play that game. So they gotta ease up on that requirement. Now, I'm not saying to skip the Series S game, but it's going to be delayed anyways because we're having issues. If it's ready to run on the Series X and it passes your certifications, there's no bugs, allow it to release on the Series X. In the future, I think the only thing that makes sense for them to be able to get past this is laxing that rule or allowing maybe on the console for cloud gaming to be enabled, so they can play the game via the cloud until the game is ready. I don't know what else they can do because the Series S, I'm sorry, it's a mistake. It's a mistake. It's the power difference between it and the Series X is just huge. Where the power difference between the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X is not, and it's easy for developers to bring both of the games to those platforms. Where now you got the Series S there, and it just complicates everything.
Yeah. The only thing, D, honestly, I like how you kind of gave a couple of strategies there. Like, if it's going to be delayed anyways, why not put it out on the X? The only thing that I say to that, and by the way, I agree with you, but the one thing that you have here in this generation that's unfolded is everything's supposed to go day and date everywhere, right? Game Pass, Xbox Series X, S, PC, okay? My point being here is that now they've got different tiers for Game Pass. So certain people who had Game Pass, I think certain people that had Game Pass Core, guys, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't mind being wrong. If you have Game Pass Core, you couldn't even play the beta of Call of Duty this past weekend. That's what I heard from a few people that have Core.
So you know what the difficulty is for Microsoft is because they actually run VM virtual machine Series X's split into Series S's for cloud. So if there isn't a Series S spec version of a game, theoretically you can't play it on the cloud either because you don't get Series X versions of games on the cloud at the moment. You get Series S versions. So I actually agree with D. And
I did
it's one of the reasons.
Yes.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I highlight these Series S things. I know a lot of Xbox fans hate me for it. I put a tweet a few days ago, and it was 12 different studios, 12 different developers complaining about the Series S. 12. And some of them are AAA, Infinity Ward, id Tech, etc. Like, these aren't small studios. Like, across the board, people are complaining about it. But I think the reason they are risking NDA and risking reputational harm with Microsoft to complain is because all the studios really in the background, they want what D is saying. They want Microsoft to lax and offer more leeway on these parity clauses, right? Because they don't want to be having these problems. They want to get games out for Series X users. They want, higher bar of fidelity and all the rest. So why are they having to be held back by this other platform and put extra time and effort and all the rest of it in, where they could have had the Series X version out sooner? And I think at some point Microsoft has to reconsider these parity clauses. And it reminds me of the 360 actually, because I remember they had core non-hard drive systems and hard drive systems, and they had a similar thing. And eventually developers were saying, look, man, we need to develop these games with the hard drive file size in mind.
Yes.
So just do something. And they went back on it, and then they said, all right, fine, core's not going to play it anymore. If you want to play these games, you need the hard drive. So I think something like that is going to have to happen, because these games are going to get more complex, more ambitious the further into the gen we get. We've only scratched the surface. Cross-gen only is only starting to rear its head. So we're going to need as much leeway as possible.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And where I was going with this, which Nib, you kind of took the baton and ran with it, is they've said now that you'd be playing games first on Game Pass. That's going to change now, depending on the tier that you have of Game Pass, that you will or will not get those games day and date, the big AAA blockbusters that are coming from the Microsoft Studios. And then you have D's idea, which, by the way, D, again, I agree. Nib agrees. I agree. That would be a good idea. Get it out there on the X. But again, you went out there, you spent $300. Let's not think $300. That's a lot of money. And you go ahead and you put that money down, and you're thinking, I'm playing these games day one on my Series S and on my Game Pass. Now you find out a few years into the generation, 4 years into the generation, pardon me, that your Series S may get the game later. And if it doesn't, and it does get it day and date, you're not going to get it on Game Pass because you don't have the ultimate package, for $19.99 a month right now. We used to say that all the time. Everything goes up. This isn't just about Microsoft. Netflix goes up. Max goes up. It doesn't matter what we're talking about. Disney Plus goes up, and they're going up over and over again. And if you think $19.99 is the end, it's not, folks. You're going to be paying $24.99 for Ultimate Game Pass at some point in the next probably 2 to 2.5 years. It's just, so where is your happy place? Where is your place of saying, I'm done paying this per month? And then if you have a Series S, you'll have to wait, because the game may not be able to be created for that. That's why I do think 26 is probably, D's guess is probably spot on. Eric, we've been talking about this a long time. That is quite the conjunction there for Xbox and to take care of their fans, because at the end of the day, the entire policy on Game Pass has changed. The entire landscape of how they were going to have the two different SKUs and how they were going to run simultaneously at the same day, released at the same time as PC, all this has changed. So when I saw Phil's quote, I know he was talking about bad game decisions, and that's not really fair to say. So I don't really hold that against Phil so much, because when somebody comes up to you and goes, hey, we got a great idea, I think he probably gets 100 of those a month. So, he's not going to take everything that comes up to him and say, oh, yeah, we'll invest in that. Yeah. But when it came down to this hardware decision, and what's going on with Game Pass, listen, people are still buying Nintendo games, They're still buying all of these games on PlayStation. If it ain't broke, don't fix it,
Right.
What do you?
I don't know. Sorry, go ahead.
D, did you have something too?
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I'm going to piggyback on what D was saying, man. Like, what I found interesting at the start of the generation, when we had the Series X reveal, at the Game Awards, like, people were excited about that. Everybody was thrilled about that.
Mm-hmm.
And for up to that point, we had 2 iterations? Correct me if I'm wrong. No, 1 iteration of power. It was all about power. Power this, power that. People had Scorpio emojis, like, in there. It was the power. And then somewhere right before we got the actual launch, Phil and Matt Booty backed off of power.
Yep.
Like, all of a sudden, it was like, that wasn't like the main thing. Because what did people always say, Mooch? Like, you threw it on the timeline, you talked about, where are the games? Where's this and that? Well, the powers, the T-flops, it's this and that. And then it became a thing of, well, that's like the most important thing, because the games will come. Games take time, but they don't want to lose the power narrative to Sony anymore. We're talking, at the beginning of the PS4, Xbox One generation is when the power narrative kind of kicked off with the 1080p versus 720 and all this other stuff. And they're never going to lose the power narrative again. And then all of a sudden they backed off power. Why? because they want to introduce this device, which my feeling on it was that device was there to compete with the Switch on a price point level.
Yeah.
You know, again, jack of all trades, master of none. We're going to throw this out there. We'll grab people, you know, who don't necessarily want the high end, but they want to come in on the middle. It'll kind of maybe I'm just me speculating. It'll compete with the Switch on a price point level, but then it threw a monkey wrench into their whole other aspect of it, and all the power talk went away. Where it all kind of tripped me up was all the power people all of a sudden were Series S people.
Yeah. Yeah.
Acquiescing. Like all of a sudden the Series S was that's the thing, man. It's important. It's this and that. It's doing this. And certain people in the community were already saying this thing's going to be a problem. And even at this point now, people are still saying it's not the problem. They're looking for every other thing to blame except for Microsoft doing what they did with this machine and putting the mandates on. It's trying to find every other thing that's wrong. Oh, well, there's a secret deal in place for Black Myth and this stuff that doesn't even matter. What does it matter? Now, if they're being cagey about it, that's one thing. You can hold the studio accountable to say, well, you're being cagey, but no one knows for sure what this deal is that they keep talking about. But that's the smoke. That's the distraction from what the real issues could necessarily be. And okay, so maybe the Series S isn't a problem for Woolong. Not Woolong, I'm saying Woolong, but for Black Myth.
Mm-hmm.
But how many other developers have jumped out to say, this thing is a problem?
Yeah. Over and over again.
And for some reason, the Xbox community doesn't want to accept that. Some people have, but it can't be the Series S because Phil and the team, they put this thing out here. So we have to protect it. We have to defend it.
Yeah. It's just, there's too many.
No, they're stepping on the rake with this thing nonstop.
Yeah. 100%.
People keep saying, well, games are developed for the Switch. Why can't it be? Yeah. Because you're talking about how many major third-party games, powerful games hit the Switch. We're not talking about that. The Switch is an indie darling. Nintendo knows how to work with it, but even with that, the Switch is showing its age.
Yeah.
People are ready to switch to.
Microsoft has literally privatized the initial videos where they were talking about the Series X. Series S. I kid you not. Like where they were saying you're going to get the same performance, same experiences on Series X, just at 1440p or whatever. Yeah. They privatized those videos. I hate to get technical, but this is something I've heard so many times. I just want to clarify for people. Now, initially there was a lot of conversation. Oh, the PS5 is RDNA 1.5, right? It's not RDNA 2. And the reason they would iterate is because it's missing specific features, right? And by and large, those features were VRS, mesh shaders, sampler feedback, etc. Mm-hmm. I need to clarify for everyone who's listening. Those specific features are DirectX Ultimate tie-in RDNA AMD features, right? PlayStation does not use DirectX. It uses its own custom API. I believe it's called ACG and ACGX, but low level, high level. But point is, those features were never going to be advertised for PlayStation in the first place. Because why would you use API specific features for DirectX RDNA 2 if you don't use DirectX? So what I was going to say is the API custom specific features that the PlayStation uses, none of us know, because PlayStation, they don't have to advertise them to vendors the way Microsoft does, because they have the GPU tie-in because of Windows, right? Yeah. DirectX. Yeah. They have to advertise these things because their vendors need to know, like, what are the features that we're going to be able to advertise. PlayStation does not, because they do not sell publicly available GPU parts. They only have the custom console, and it's a proprietary API. So we're actually never going to know what version of mesh shaders or VRS or whatever it is they use. We don't know. All we know is that they have super talented people in their teams, ICE team, and and on top of that, even Digital Foundry, they put a video out a few weeks back, or maybe it was a couple of months, and they said, we've spoken to developers, and they're saying that the PlayStation shaders and API is just much better to work at. And even though they can't specify what that means, essentially what they're saying is the PlayStation's versions of these API features is better. It's more, I
just want to address, because you said a lot there. I just want to address it real quick. So I was one of those people in the beginning that was, I didn't say it was RDNA 1.5. I said it was RDNA 2 Lite. And that was because it was missing those said features that you said. Now, if we go deep into it, the hardware VRS, it does not have it. That's just not an API issue. That's also a hardware issue. So It doesn't have hardware VRS. But to be honest with you, hardware VRS, it didn't really make a big difference this generation. In fact, a lot of games that use it, they had to take it off because it really kind of killed the image quality, right? And the the mesh shaders now the mesh shaders was a very interesting situation when Alan Wake came out, and I was looking at the performance of the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. It wasn't much different. The Xbox Series X did beat it initially by like a few frames. Like it had better frame rate, not much, maybe like 6 to 7 frames better. But they were both running the same settings and the same resolution. And I was like, how the hell is this possible? Because the PlayStation 5 can't do mesh shaders. And then I dug really, really deep into it. And lo and behold, you know, it can do mesh shaders because it is based off of RDNA 2. It's just the API difference. So the PlayStation 5, their API sees it as a primitive shader. DirectX 12 sees it as a mesh shader. But here's the kicker. The primitive shaders on AMD is what does mesh shaders, because true mesh shaders are an NVIDIA thing, right? So they had to create the hardware on there to do what the mesh shaders do, because that became the de facto method, right? So they're actually both using the same type of hardware to do mesh shaders. It's just a difference in the API. So the PlayStation 5 actually can do mesh shaders, and I released a video on that, and it was like it was such a big controversy. A lot of people were in denial. Digital Foundry talked to the developers of Alan Wake as well as Avatar. They're using mesh shaders on both the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X. So yeah, I just wanted to address what you said there.
To double back on that, I think it was last year. There's a sort of engine. They do like engine tools for different companies and things like that called Telsium. And Telsium, they put out papers all the time with like graphics engine and tool set experimentation and stuff like that. And they did an experimentation with mesh shaders versus a software variant API that does a similar thing that they created, right? And their software variant was 7 times more performant than using mesh shaders with hardware, just because the algorithms and stuff that they use, they just thought were superior. So the point is as well, just because a feature exists, whether it's on PlayStation or Xbox, it doesn't mean that the developers might not already have an in-house version that they can implement that does a superior job. Because, and I would tie back to Forbidden West, VSR and everything, and those kind of like image quality, shading, whatever, API features, they haven't had actually the best results in real world sense. Whereas something like Forbidden West, if you look at the 60 frames per second performance mode, I don't know what bloody magic they're using, but you can almost not tell it apart from post-patch. I mean, you can almost not tell it apart from the 4K native version. And I don't know, again, whatever API or software they're using to get that result, but no other game I've tried has actually replicated sort of upscaling or whatever as well. So maybe they're using their own in-house version of something, algorithmically like DLSS, I don't know. But point is, again, like software-wise, companies can do their own implementations that may be superior to what the public API versions are. So it's another thing to consider.
So I used to clown Sony about their software differences, especially compared to DX12. And I gotta say, this generation, they made their system a lot easier to develop for. And you're right, like it's surprising, because when you look at the PlayStation 5's hardware, yes, the Xbox Series X and the PlayStation 5, they're both close, but there's still some differences there. The Xbox Series X has a little bit more brute power, and you're not seeing that translated in games because of their software and the development that they have over there. And they just did a great job with the PlayStation 5. You can't deny at this point, we're like 4 years into the generation, and we have games that run better on the PlayStation 5. I'm not saying there's like a tremendous amount, but there are some. They trade blows, but in a situation where the Xbox is more powerful, that should never be in the first place, right?
So D, let me ask you, D, because I do want to bring this subject up, especially since we're on it now. The PS5 Pro, right? So now it's the all but known secret now. I mean, it's even in the 30-year anniversary that they're promoting right now. Yeah. PlayStation already has that kind of logo that we've already seen be released a week ago. D, where's your, and I know you've done videos, you're probably going to do one again this week, next week, which I'm hoping for, because I want to check it out. What do you think here? A lot of people are asking in the chat, what will we see, or what do you expect to see in the PS5 Pro, this mid-gen refresh that will enhance, and what's What's kind of the incentive for somebody to upgrade?
Well, based on the specs that we know, it looks like it's going to be based off a 7700 XT. And if that's the case, then you can expect high ultra graphics on all the games because it's just going to be capable of doing that. I think we're going to see native 4K. I think we're going to see 1440p high frame rate. I think the games that struggle with the CPU are still going to struggle to some degree with the CPU.
Right.
But because they're going to get a little boost from the GPU and you know, the efficiency there, they might. I think with VRR being a better range on the PlayStation 5 Pro going to much lower than what it is now, I think that VRR is going to be much better on that console. So the games that don't reach to like the 60 FPS, that say they're at like 45, 50, 55, they're going to run really smooth with VRR being much better on the PlayStation 5 Pro. I think the big thing for the PlayStation 5 Pro is going to be PSSR.
That's what I was just
now,
going to ask.
Is it going to be like DLSS? Because if it's going to be like DLSS, then it's going to be a game changer. Are they going to have frame gen? If it has frame gen, and I'm gonna go and say they're gonna have frame gen because it's gonna be AMD hardware and it already supports frame gen. So if you're getting a higher frame rate and you use frame gen, it's a lot more effective. So I think frame gen and PSSR, I think it's gonna be. I think that's really what's gonna sell the system. They're gonna have to show the contrast of the regular PlayStation 5 and the PlayStation 5 Pro and all the benefits you're going to get. And I think that Sony has to be the one that presents this. If Sony presents this and, you know, they lay out the differences and you see visually the difference between the PlayStation 5 Pro and the PlayStation 5, and they can increase the frame rates because a lot of people are like, the CPU, it's pretty much the same, which it is.
Yeah.
And that's an issue because there's some games that are CPU bound. And I think this generation, I don't think the GPUs are so bad as much as the CPU is still pretty weak, especially compared to what we have now. You have like the Rogue Ally that has a better CPU than the consoles, right? So that's an issue. I wish they would address it. I'm hoping that, oh yeah, you know what? We changed the CPU, but it doesn't look like that's going to be the case. That'd be awesome. But PSSR is going to have to, you know, carry the load there. If they can get it like DLSS, I don't think console gamers understand how well DLSS works, that machine learning that's on the neural network. I don't think they understand that you get, most of the time, better image quality than the native image quality that it can provide because it cleans up all the aliasing. It just gives you a great look. If they can nail this, it's going to be a hit. Like, where would you want to play GTA 6?
Right.
You want to play it on the PlayStation 5? Do you want to play it on the Xbox Series X? Or do you want to play it on the PlayStation 5 Pro with ultra high settings?
Right.
With a higher frame rate, with better VRR.
So D, you literally, so what I was reading and interpreting, you just basically said out loud, so I don't need to repeat it at all, but D saying that you're going to have the increased GPU strength that takes care of a lot of what you're having in resolution issues. Now that may be solved. And because the CPU is legitimately a clone, so one for one, I don't know if it's upclocked, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's the PSSR that will steal the show and bringing the frame rate differential up on certain games that are not overly intensive on the CPU. So D, I completely agree. Nib, I'll go to you with this question. Everything that D said is the way that I'm reading everything thus far, as far as the rumors are. There's nothing actually coming that's 100% from Sony yet.
Can I just add one thing too? I just want to add one thing also, because I think PlayStation fans would want to hear this. There's a lot of games that are on the current console that are GPU bound, right? So they can only get so much frames because they're GPU bound. Those games are going to increase in frame rate because they're not going to be GPU bound on the PlayStation 5 Pro. So don't think because the CPU is the same that none of the frame rates are going to go up. No, frame rates are going to go up. Just the games that have intensive CPU, you know, they struggle with the CPU now. They're not going to go up too much, but the VRR will compensate for it because they're going to have a much better range on the PlayStation 5 Pro.
No, and I appreciate that clarification. Nib, hearing everything that D just said, hear me out for a second. What's the price point now? What do we give me? I would like a physical version and a digital version price. Nib, do you have anything that you're? Because I know that you read everything that we read, but what D's saying as far as specs and what we can come to assume when we get a final release, which is hopefully we hear something in the next week or two. You think this thing is going to be what, 600, 650 US dollars, of course? Maybe we lost Nib. Nib might be buying one right now. Nibby, I see he's dipping out. He'll be right back. He said, all right, there he is. Singer, if you got a price point, you can throw that at us too.
Hello, can you hear me?
We hear you now. But
yeah, cool. Yeah. So I was going to say, I have a feeling. Well, my prediction was $600 to $700 for both versions. I don't know. It could actually be higher because even the Series X, like 2 terabyte version, special edition, is like 600, right? 599, if I remember correct. But the rumors are that, again, I don't know, that it could come with a digital variant SKU, and then they charge additional for the drive as an attachment.
Right.
So say, like, I don't know, 600, 650, and then they charge $69 or something for the attachment.
Yep.
I suppose they could do that as well as a way to have the one price point look slightly lower, even though in reality it will be higher when you add the attachment. But yeah, I feel like it's probably going to be expensive. I would love to be wrong. I would love for it to come in lower. Mm-hmm. But just piggybacking off what D was saying, I think he's right. Like if it's CPU burdened and limited, we probably won't see much of a difference because it's a tiny upclock, right? Whereas the GPU, like for example, Black Myth Wukong is a GPU intensive game as far as Digital Foundry's testings and stuff. So that actually could benefit. Something like that could benefit quite a lot. But there is like one other thing I was going to say, which as far as I know has never been even mentioned on Digital Foundry, but NX Gamer has touched on it a few times, is if you notice with certain games, like for example, Baldur's Gate 3, when you're in Act 3, you're in the city, yes, the PS5 version performs better. It has higher frames. When you're in the city in Dragon's Dogma 2 with loads of NPCs and stuff, again, CPU intensive, the PS5 version has quite a frame advantage over the Series X. So, which is weird, right? Because the Series X actually has a higher clock speed of CPU than the PS5. So why in CPU intensive scenes is the PS5 performing better than the Series X? And I think the reason for that is, which again NX Gamer has touched on, the PS5 hardware decompression I/O system is actually a lot more custom than Series X is. And a lot more of the CPU alleviating tasks are taken away from the CPU and done by the decompression blocks and everything else. Mm-hmm. Now, Series X does have hardware decompression as well, but even with direct storage, when data is being funneled from storage to system RAM, the CPU is still having to do the I/O check-in and everything else. Because basically, in layman's terms, the CPU has to assess the data that's going across and say, yeah, okay, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Right? Which seems menial, right? Because most of the difficulty is the decompression. But the thing is, with the games we have these days, they use more and more and more data, and their asset streaming orders of magnitude more because the CPU, the SSD speeds are so fast. So they're constantly relying on vast amounts of data transferring from the SSD to the system RAM. And because of that, the CPU is having to do way more check-in than usual than you would have had to do in the previous generation. And because the PS5 I/O and decompression system with the controllers and everything does all of that completely on its own, doesn't have to burden the CPU at all, whereas the Series X CPU is still having to do check-in and all the rest of it. I think that is why we're seeing the difference in the CPU difference, even though the Series X CPU. And I think, we don't know what the PS5 Pro is doing. Maybe it will be an exact, but they could piggyback off of that and have more CPU leeway giving features within the overall architecture. So maybe that could free up the CPU even more for other things. Who knows? We have to wait and see. So, but I just thought that was...
No, that's very interesting, Nib. And I got to say, between what you're saying and what Dee was just saying, you both make a very strong case for a higher price tag. The only thing, and I'll ask Singer here, is... Oh, Dee, go ahead if you want to chime in, because I did mention you. But
so
what do you think about price?
Yeah, one of my sources actually told me what the price is going to be. They said it's going to be between 600 and 650 USD. They said it's just they only know of one SKU so far. It's going to be digital, and that it's going to launch the week of Black Friday, and that we're going to get an announcement via direct before the end of the month. But that information came out today, but I did a video on this
When did you do the video, D? I apologize.
Maybe like 3 days ago, I did a video on this, and then I think I tweeted it out like 2 days ago the new information on the release date. So
I stopped.
It's a good source, but take everything with a grain of salt, obviously. But this can't be priced too high.
Exactly.
I think we're going to see a drop
on the
regular PlayStation 5, a tiny drop in it, not much over the holidays. And I think it's going to land at I think realistically $650 is the price it'll land at. And when I look at the Series X, the all digital, the 2 terabyte, I sit there and I think, how is that going to survive when the PlayStation 5 Pro comes out at that price? If it comes out at that price.
Yeah, that's the thing. I question Sony here. I say, wait a minute, are you trying to get as many people to buy this as possible? Now, you guys all know Moochonomics. We say it every week, right? If you have a PS5 physical edition, it's upwards of $350. Let's just on the safe side, $350 trade in right now. So it's worth it, I think, if you're a hardcore gamer. But I think that 6 number in front scares a lot of consumers, D.
I think if they get to that price point, I think it's something they had some type of deal with AMD, because if PSSR is like DLSS and it's dedicated hardware, and it's does the same thing, you better believe that AMD is going to be using that in their next GPU. So maybe they co-created something together for their next line of RDNA GPUs, and the PlayStation 5 is the first kind of thing of it, and maybe they can get some type of discount because of the the research and development that they did on it. I don't know, but I know this can't be that expensive. It can't come out expensive. It just can't.
So before like people would these just making stuff up or whatever, but it's interesting you say that, because Mark Cerny actually said verbatim what you're saying. He said it's not that. He said we're co-collaborating with AMD. I don't know the exact quotes. I'm relaying it, but I have a rough idea of it in my head. The answer. But he said it's not that we just want custom features within the PS5. For us, the success would be if AMD adopted them as well. So what you're saying is kind of actually what PlayStation wants. They want to collaborate with AMD to come up with stuff that they implement in future as well. I think at the time he may have been talking about the variable power. Like, I don't mean smart shift. People think smart shift is the same as what PS5 does. I don't mean that. I mean the transfer of power depending on where it needs to go based on power load. But anyway, I don't want to get into that. But yeah, so on the point about the PS5 Pro's price, beforehand, I would have said they may have come in more competitively. But with everything that's going on with Xbox now, and Xbox essentially turning to this multi-platform strategy and bringing more of their games to PlayStation, I just wonder if they have as much of that incentive now.
Yeah,
because of
that's fair
to come in lower. I don't know. Like, we'll see if it's greedy Sony or not.
You do have to think about it though for a second. As much as all of us that have our ear to the ground and know what's going on and what Microsoft's plans are moving forward, and we see that with Indiana Jones, and we see that with the new Doom game. The thing about it though, Nib, at the end of the day, people walking in that are not necessarily paying attention to what's going on with Digital Foundry and what's happening with Xbox's business podcast they had in February. You start getting up to that 650 or 700 that some people are saying they could run with. And I by the way, the point that you made, I understand, because why do they have to be so competitive if they're only ones in that real market right now? I understand that. Yeah. But I also want to get these boxes in people's homes. And, at the end of the day,
it's one of those things where, you could make more money from fewer rather than less money from more. So I think it's going to be predominantly enthusiasts buying this anyway, right? Like, we have to say, are you not going to buy it if it's 700? Am I not going to buy it because it's 700? I'm still
well, I just told you for 700 though, you're going to get 350 for your trade-in. So you're paying 350 out of pocket for another 4 years in the generation. I don't think that's a lot for people that play games like we do on a daily basis or every other day. I don't think that's a lot, but there'll be a lot of people that would disagree.
What I'll say is, the CEOs and stuff, we've talked about this on your podcast. I've quoted them multiple times when they spoke about this strategy to bring PC gamers over to PlayStation.
Yes.
And we know from like Steam hardware survey data, again, I've discussed this with Singer and stuff, how the majority of Steam players have a GPU less performant than the PS5. If they did price well, the PS5 Pro well, it would be more of that sort of incentive. Like, okay, people who have aging PCs and everything, come over. Here's a high-end piece of hardware that is still going to be more value proposition than the equivalent PC, but you can get more closer to the kind of expectations and performance or whatever that you're used to or that you desire on this piece of hardware. So maybe by pricing it well in that regard, they could pull more people over from the PC side.
I would have to completely disagree with that because
as
much as you say, oh, the hardware. Well, for one, the most popular card is now the 30 series, which that's equivalent anyway. But then
but it's only 3.2% of people who have it though.
But then again, you have to factor in. It's like, yeah, of course, the hardware is like it's a bit better, but you now have to pay to play online.
Of course.
That will instantly they'll go. I am paid to play online for 10 years. Why are you now going to make me start paying to play?
I get it. I'm not saying a large number, right? It doesn't have to be a large number because I think like 14 million people bought the PS4 Pro, if I remember correctly, and there's 130 million on Steam, right? 137 or something like that. So it doesn't have to be, even if like it was 2 million or 3 million of them. Again, 3 million people buy a PS5 Pro who may ordinarily not have. That's still 3 million people who then spend you get a 30% digital cut on every single transaction they make. And again, they have the data, right? Like 33% of PC gamers had a PS4 alongside their active PC gamers. And on launch year alone, 8% of PC gamers bought a PS5. So they must be cognizant of the percentages and splits. So, that's
just people upgrading from the PS4 to PS5, though. And that's if you mess with exclusives. Also, Steam is just a fraction of what the PC player base is.
But why would you need to do that if you already have But if you already have a gaming PC, why would you need to buy a PS5?
Well, if you're interested in the exclusives that they have,
exactly.
Over there, like if you owned a PS4, you probably played like The Last of Us and God of War.
Well, think about a lot of the games, though. A lot of the game singer that you mentioned, when you say, "Okay, I do understand your point," you're not buying in. I'm saying, but you say, "I understand your point." There's games like Uncharted. There's games like God of War. There's games like Astrobot. There's games like Returnal. You don't need to pay online to play those games. So a lot of times people
also you also have to bear in mind this was before PlayStation were bringing their games to PC, the PS4, right?
That's correct.
Now they're bringing their games to PC. That's even going to turn a lot more off because PC gamers can wait, and if you say 2 years, they'll be like, bet 2 years. And that's
can I give a reverse situation real quick, because I know we always talk about PC gamers will wait, which I think we've heard that enough to where listen, I believe you, but I kind of do the reverse. I have a capable PC that I play on every once and again. I don't play very often, more console. You guys all know that. But let's just take, for example, Death Stranding Director's Edition or Director's Cut that he had. Okay, so I went ahead, I played that on PlayStation. I didn't want to wait. And then when it came out on PC, I picked it up again later. And as you like to say all the time, Singer, the definitive edition, right? The best version out there, right? So I pick it up there and I pick it up on the cheap. So my whole thing is just being the gamer that I am. If I want to play a game, I understand that you're okay waiting and that's fine. But, I literally don't want to wait 12 months to 24 months to we don't know
not everyone will.
Why do I want to especially, do you remember everyone is short to remember. I remember when we were in COVID and everybody was home, we were all gaming. I was talking to so many people and people were like, you know what, Mooch, you know what I learned through this COVID thing? Life's too short. Life is too goddamn short. I'm going to enjoy this. I'm going on vacation. But then the minute it was over and we were back out again, everyone's like, I'll wait 2 years. And I'm like, well, if you enjoy the game, now if you don't enjoy it, this isn't for you. But like, I don't understand how everyone went from life's too short in 2020 to like, I can wait 36 months. And I'm like, what?
But here's the thing, Mooch, because it's not just if you don't want to wait. It's also your system is already less performant than this new piece of hardware. So it's like, not only do you not want to wait, but if you buy this high value proposition system, which is going to work out a lot cheaper than the PC equivalent, you can actually get way better versions of games than you're actually already playing. Because 75% of them have a less performant piece of hardware. So it's like a
caveat to that, because as much as you like to say this, like if you compare a game, if you go like for like, the thing is, unlike console, you can adjust the settings. So let's say I had like a 20,
yeah, of course,
right?
yeah.
A 2080, and I'm directly competing with the PS5, right?
Right.
The thing is, for when I'm generally probably at like 1440p anyway. And this is a problem with console development. They love going for these graphical, pump it up to 4K. Let's say, can we hit 4K? Can we not?
Right.
PC gamers generally don't give a shit, right? If you can hit 4K, you can. If you can't, who cares, right? Half the time, ray tracing is turned off on console. You don't have a choice most of the time. So you could go into the settings. It's like you can get the game to perform better than the console, because if that's why Digital Foundry does PC specs, console specs, so you can spec out your PC to what the console is, and most of the time people are running stuff on high, but the PS5 is running stuff on medium, for example. So if you drop everything down, you'll even have a better experience because there's so many options to play with. You can adjust the volumetric lighting, you can adjust everything into it, so you can make it more performant than the console, and it can look just as good. So
it won't look just as good and perform better unless you have a GPU that's more performant, right? So consoles, by and large, and Digital Foundry did a whole analysis on this as well. You know, maybe I can dig it up in a second. They said like the GPU equivalent in PC in a like-for-like system, the PS5 actually performs better. Because obviously it's a closed system, optimizations are different, all the rest of it, API is different. You can usually pull out a bit more juice out of the console equivalent than you can on the PC. And actually, they said that gets worse and worse. That gets more and more of a differential the more a generation goes on, because with updates and stuff, GPUs tend to fall by the wayside, and consoles still get the sort of maximum support up until their end of life. So I don't know what the equivalent will be. I know some people are saying 7800 XT, some people are saying some GRE GPU because of the compute and stuff. No, but you know,
I've seen those things. It's like, it's gonna be around there, and it's like the thing is, it's like the days of console used to be they were caught up to PC, but now they'll never catch up. Because the rate of technology moves. So it would probably be a 6700, I guess you could say. Just normal one. No X's, no nothing. 6700.
No. It will be way more than that.
It won't be an XT.
It'll be more than that, yeah. Yeah, because just going by the compute units, it can't be that low. Because the number of compute it has, the teraflop that we've been given, you know, which is from an official PlayStation documentation, it can't be that low. It has to be higher.
Teraflops don't tell the whole story. Plus, bear in mind, consoles use APUs. You're using a graphics card and a CPU, so you need to add what your CPU and graphics card does.
Yeah, but they're only talking about the GPU. They're not considering the CPU in the GPU compute calculation.
Well, even then, they're different. Like a discrete graphics card versus an APU, right? So it's you can't really go like for like. You can compare them, but it's never apples to apples because
but you can get extremely close.
But you can compare the GPU power.
Oh
yeah, you can compare the powers individually because they're just combined. You can
exactly because PlayStation's GPU component on the APU is essentially going to be something that AMD has similar product line, right? Because they don't want to go too different on their on their fabrication and everything and all of that. It will be something they have in the pipeline already that they're essentially customizing for the PS5 Pro. But yeah, in that regard, when you look at the number of compute units and all the rasterization and all of that, it compares to a much higher end than you're saying. So I think you're probably going to be a little bit surprised at the GPU performance based on what you're saying. And I would love to come back to this when the PS5 Pro launches and we can run through comparisons.
I hope that they do what you said too, Nib, and I hope they don't just have a reveal with a date. I hope they actually do a breakdown again with Mark Cerny like they did with the PS5. I think that's kind of almost wanted by many in the industry.
I think what Digital Foundry will do though is they will find a GPU equivalent, just like they did with the PS5, that has a similar breakdown of specs, and they will do a comparison with as close as they can get with like, and then they'll, just like the PS5, they'll do a whole gamut of tests, and they'll see how it performs in comparison to the PC equivalent. And I think, that people will probably be quite surprised.
Well, it depends, because we'll have to see, because it's like everyone said the PS5 was going to be was going to be up there with all the 30 series, and it's going to do this, and it didn't come out that way.
I was
so
never
the
one of those
PS5
people.
Pro, so the PS5 Pro, they're going to say it's going to be a 60 whatever 100 XT.
Yeah,
but we have to wait and see, because it always disappoints.
I'm not saying it's going to perform better than something that has way more computational performance. I'm saying it's going to perform similar to something that has the same computational performance and similar spec sheet. But you're saying it's going to perform the same as something that has less computational performance and less compute units.
I'll agree.
Yeah, if we look at the spec sheet and we take it for face value, then it's going to perform like a 7700 XT, which is far beyond what the consoles are doing right now.
Yeah, exactly.
The GPU is any way you want to slice it, the GPU is a substantial upgrade, undeniable.
Yeah, and that's going to warrant that price tag too, D. So I will say this: I think that we've gotten enough. We have as far as speculation. We're going to have to wait until we hear something in a few weeks, and hopefully it's more of a technical breakdown than just this is when you can buy it. But I will say this, guys. I did tell Nib this before the show. We've had like 3.5 hour shows this week. I do have to cut it a bit short for tomorrow. I have to get up extremely early, and it's already 3 o'clock in the morning for my dear friends in Wales and South England. We'll say that, Nib. We're not going to get too specific.
Before you close up, let me,
go ahead.
Just so that, because I want for posterity, right? But just to Singer. So I'm on the relative performance chart on tech GPU, whatever it's called. Mm-hmm. So 6700 is 7700 XT, which is roughly equivalent to what the PS5 Pro is, has been spec'd at, is 42% more performant than a 6700. 42%. So you saying it's going to be similar to a 6700, I think you're going to be way off the mark, dude.
But then saying the 7700 XT puts
the PlayStation 5 right now is a 6700.
Yeah, exactly. That's what Digital Foundry said. Yeah, yeah, you're right.
The thing is, you put the 7700 XT, now you're in the 4070 range of graphics cards, and you're not getting that.
So 6700 XT, which is also on this list, is 16% more performant than a 6700, and the 7700 XT is 42% more performant. So even going from a 6700 XT to a 7000 XT is still a big difference.
I mean, I don't think
it'll be that. Hold on a second. I don't understand your argument here, because this is AMD hardware. These are AMD compute units. We have AMD graphic cards that are out with the same hardware, with the same compute units, where we can extrapolate the performance. There's nothing to argue about. Now, if we were trying to compare it to, say, NVIDIA or something, then you could, pull some straws and say, okay, maybe it's an equivalent.
I agree. Yeah.
But we know what it is equivalent-wise to AMD, and then it might even go past that, because it's going to have some custom stuff in there.
Exactly.
We know it's going to do PSSR, so it's not even going to be at the level of a regular 7700 XT, because it's going to have extra features on it. But then again, T-flops wise, that's where we're at.
But see, this is the problem. People think spec sheets. Real world performance, your console can match up to my 6700. You are not getting the frame rates I'm getting. You are not getting...
Because of the CPU.
What I'm getting.
CPU, yeah.
Right, so you can match the spec sheets. You can match the spec sheets, but you can't say, I'm going to get that performance. No, you're not going to get that performance.
Hold on a second. On a game that's not CPU bound, you're gonna get the same performance on a game that's CPU bound. You're gonna get more performance on the PC counterpart, because the CPU is more. But if you were to clock out the CPU on the PC side the same as the console, like what Digital Foundry does in its videos, then you're gonna get the same performance, or relative.
You're not gonna get the same performance.
You Digital Foundry already done the test. I'll send you the link. I'll send you the video. They've done a comprehensive test compared to. Yeah, and they said it was roughly. Roughly 60.
I don't know if
the thing is,
I remember specifically. I remember specifically, 6700 versus PS5. I think they said the PS5 performed better in. It was I believe it was Plague Tale Requiem and Alan Wake, and then in Avatar and a few other games, the 6700 performed better. But basically what they were saying is some games that perform better, some games that perform worse, so it was roughly equivalent. It was like within a 4 to 7% delta. So already the PS5 performs basically this equivalent as a 6700 with other components aligned. So the PS5 Pro cannot perform the equivalent to a 6700 if the PS5 already does.
And we have digital Foundry, which is far more versed and knowledgeable than any of us on here. They built a PC spec'd out to the PlayStation 5 specs, and when they're doing their comparisons, when they want to compare how it would run on a PC, because they did it recently with Wukong, they did that for the Xbox Series S. Actually, the Series S, its GPU is equivalent to the 5500 XT from AMD, which is like a 1660 Super, which is really weak, but we won't go there. But the point is that like these are PC parts. They're not. There's customizations in there, but at their core, the GPU is a PC part. So we're gonna have the relative performance within like 5 to 10%.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, here's what I'm hearing. I'm hearing a round 2 Death Singer in a few weeks. That's what I'm hearing. We have to get D-Batch back on here, Nib, and yourself.
You know what's funny?
The thing is.
I was just gonna be insulting, but I was gonna say the console-centric people are telling the PC gamer about PC hardware specs and GPU. I find that funny.
Crazy. I know. That's why I pull my hairs out sometimes, because like, where do you think the hardware is coming from? It's coming from the PC. Like, come on.
Well,
what are you doing here?
I mean, that's obvious, but to New's point, you're not saying there's nothing really to be said. You're saying it's going to be a 7700 XT. Okay, cool. But what's that real-world performance going to be? And yes, okay, they have PSSR, but is it actually going to be any good? Right? Because
that is a valid question. Will the PSSR be any good? That's a valid question. But the compute, if the compute power, if it's as the leak state, which I believe they are, then it's a substantial upgrade, man.
Well, even if you say it is a substantial upgrade. But I don't think you're going to get what you think you're going to get out of the performance of a Pro. If you think every single game in the future is going to be 60 FPS and above, I have a bridge to sell you.
Nobody's saying that.
That's not
what we're not saying that.
It's really simple. The games that are CPU bound, they're not going to see a huge increase. They might see like a 10 FPS increase. Now let's see what PSSR does. You know, they might see a 5% increase in performance. They're not going to see a big uptick on CPU-bound games. Let's not forget, there's not that many CPU-bound games this generation. Like, let's not overblow it. There are some, but it's not the majority. You know, most games are fine, and most games, in fact, are GPU-bound. And like I said, those GPU-bound games, you will definitely see an increase in frame rate on the GPU-bound games because they're not bound anymore. They got more memory. They got more compute units. They can stretch their legs, and you're going to see better performance. Now, every single game. Will it get a frame rate increase? Maybe not. They'll get an increase in resolution. They'll get an increase in the settings.
So let me do this, guys. The one thing you never hear Mooch do is wrap up a show. I've got to go tonight, guys. I want to keep this going. Believe me, I go 4 hours with these guys. This is phenomenal.
But one time I want to stay long, Mooch.
I was going to say, D, usually you write me and go, Mooch, it's been 90 minutes. I got to get the hell out of here. I got to go somewhere. So the one time D's here, I'm like, I got to go. I literally have to get up so early tomorrow, guys. I apologize. I promised to the audience, and, well, I shouldn't say this. It's their time. But I'm hoping D, Death Singer, and Nib will come back when we find out a little bit more information because this is extremely interesting. And I love this conversation. It's very, very interesting. And the audience is really into it as well. Guys, let me say this much. Before we go, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I didn't even say it enough tonight. Shout out also to the great Lord Metroid, who said Echoes of Wisdom is Game of the Year. LOL. Just joking, too soon, but he means it. Sphinx38 says Gears E-Day will play best on PS5 Pro. Guys, that being said, I do want to go in reverse order here, and I will say to D, honestly, I know tonight of all nights, right? You're like, I can stay, and I'm like, I will say this much, just for everyone to know, we're at about a 3-hour podcast, so I'm very proud of everybody on the show, by the way. Outstanding work tonight, folks. But D, let people know where they can find you, and I will reach out to you in about 2 or 3 weeks once we get the reveal and see what your availability is.
Yeah, sure. You can find me on Twitter at dbatch and at YouTube at dbatch. I have some content up. You can watch it. I have some stuff on the PlayStation 5 Pro. Game releases are coming out like crazy, so there's a lot of stuff with Star Wars and Wukong, and we're gonna have some Astrobot stuff on there. And next week we're gonna have even Space Marines too. So if you want to see some gameplay, that's probably what you're gonna get the next few days, unless we get some big news.
Yes.
Thanks for having me on. And I gotta be honest, man. I'm pretty excited for the PlayStation 5 Pro because GTA, I'm not looking forward to really playing that game at 30 FPS. If I can even play that game at 45 FPS with VRR, I'll be happy. So I'm excited for the PlayStation 5 Pro. It's going to be a better place to play my PlayStation 5 games. So why wouldn't I be? So,
Yep.
We'll see how it turns out.
I think anyone who's a gaming enthusiast that wants to play their games, if you can wait like the great singer, that's fine. And there's nothing wrong with that. But if you want to play your games day one and they're only available there, that will be the place to play it. So I'm right there with you, D. D, thanks for being here tonight. Nib, I'll be honest with you. The reason we're ending early is I'm taking an early 6 a.m. flight right over to your restaurant. I'm hoping you guys do a nice brunch. Yes, I love good food. Love good food. I think that's probably my second passion after games. Nib,
you don't want to eat with me, man. If you eat with me, you're gonna leave 2 stone heavier.
That's all right. I have a treadmill for that. Nib, listen, I want to say this much. Thanks for being here tonight, buddy. I know it's late for you and Singer, but let people know where they can find you. And thanks for being here tonight.
Just Twitter NIB95_. That's it. Good discussion. I swear, I always do this because I was like, I want to close early so I can play Astrobot, but I feel like I could have spoken for another half an hour. It was getting contentious.
And like I said, I probably would have had the show. Last week's show went 3.5 hours, and I said to Nib, we're probably not going to be able to go that long tonight because of my situation. So I said, he goes, let's just keep going. Don't worry about it. Nib, great to have you here as always. I definitely will be reaching out to you as soon as we get that PS5 Pro information. The great Death Singer. Singer, outstanding to have you here tonight as well. Singer, I hope we paid you your respect and gave you your flowers. I mean, listen, we made some jokes, but in all honesty, we give you credit where credit's due. Singer, I always love having you on the show. I love bringing this. We now bring like an Xbox, a PlayStation, a PC panelist to the front, and it's just great having you on the show. Singer, let people know where they can find you, and thanks for being here tonight.
I mean, you can find me playing Black Moose Wukong at a real 60 plus FPS.
There it is, folks.
Not that fake 60 on console, because that power, that optimized, whatever. You can find me everywhere playing games. Currently playing Space Marine 2.
Nice.
I'm enjoying it.
Very good game. Very good game. I'll be joining you next week, Singer. I'm just waiting. I already have Astrobot this weekend. I can't play both of them, but I will be buying that on the how would I put it? The standard launch day of, I believe it's Monday it comes out, believe it or not, the 9th. So that'll be interesting. You don't usually see a Monday release, but I'll take it. So I think the game looks fantastic. Shout out to the great Brap. He couldn't make it tonight. That's at Brap_podcast. Shout out to Eric Jackson. I want to leave early. That's at ECJAXSON. Shout out to Eric. Great guy in the community. Detective Seeds. That's at Detective Seeds. Go over and check him out on Twitter as well. Go over and check him out on YouTube. Does great work. Platinum trophy runs. You definitely want to check that out. The Great Crap Gamer was here tonight. Hopefully join us again next week. That's at _Crap Gamer. The Great Gaming Forte is live right now with Slow-Mo Backslap. Go over and check him out on DPS Podcast. That's at Gaming_Forte. Guys, outstanding show. Please again, hit that like button on the way out. Hit that subscribe button. Your name comes up in lights. And we will see you next Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern. Until then, enjoy your games. Go play Astrobot. We'll talk about it next week. Peace out. Good night.
Peace.
Peace, everyone.
All right, later, guys.
Later.
Yeah, laters.